Okay, the stream is live now, and so I've joined with Loudmouth and Voltaire. Is that do you?
Yes,
Yeah, Friedrich Voltaire, or do you not? Or I don't
Frederick
remember.
Voltaire Bastiat.
Okay, yeah, and so we're going to be discussing a little bit about governments in general, and because this is a topic that we just started discussing in our Twitter chat about the tyranny of the majority, talking about true democracies, and this also includes women's right to vote, as well as we started talking a little bit about gay marriage and that sort of thing. And this is what ultimately the source of this, or what the core issue is at play, is what should a democracy or a republic be able to vote on, and what's the difference between a republic and a democracy. And Voltaire ended up mentioning the tyranny of the majority when it comes to issues like this, and I'm in full agreement with that perspective. The other thing so I don't know if you noticed the title of this stream, the tyranny of the majority, I think also aptly applies to socialism and all socialist endeavors. It's the tyranny of the majority. So hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on all of those topics and at least provide some thinking material if you're not familiar with these particular topics.
Well, on socialism, it's not really like a tyranny of the majority. Like when you really think about it, it usually be like a few elites, a
No,
few
no,
oligarchs,
yeah.
and
So you're talking about, okay, I guess I need to specify, like, socialism the way that Ham and Lapis want it. They want the United States to have more socialistic policies like safety nets, universal health care, pay for all this stuff, all these entitlements and benefits. So it's not true socialism as in trying to establish full-blown communism, but just the providing for everything and the government being the source of all, everything that your society has. It's like everybody.
European style socialism.
Yes, European style socialism, because that's from my understanding, that's what both of them advocate for.
I thought Lapis wanted worker co-ops, worker
Yeah.
unions,
So
or
I am not entirely sure because she hasn't, because we did slightly discuss this about 2 weeks ago, trying to get her position on that, and it wasn't the typical socialist definition, from at least from what I could gather.
like she rejects the Soviet style of socialism.
Yeah,
Uh,
because that's the typical. It's like, oh, if you say that is socialism, they're like, oh no, that's not true socialism, and you're like, seems like
and she seemed like she rejects central
yeah,
planning that much either.
which I think would be that it's inevitable. I wonder how you can have socialism without central planning.
I think she just wants worker co-ops.
Okay, like I got no problem with that, but how do you prevent somebody from stopping being in a worker co-op and starting a capitalistic industry? To stop somebody from doing that, you'd have to have some kind of structure saying, hey, those guys are trying to start up a capitalist system over there. They're hiring employees, and they're starting bourgeoisie and versus proletariat. No, we got to go shut them down. How do you do
Because
that without a government or without some kind of central authority?
well, I think she's a libertarian socialist. Well, more the left type of
Yes,
libertarian.
I'm also a homosexual straight person as well, and
Yeah.
and I'm a highly religious atheist as well.
Yes, a highly religious atheist. That's
Fuck that shit.
yeah,
Libertarian.
socialist libertarian. You're like, wait, what?
No.
That's it. Yeah.
I have to be honest to represent her positions, but she had to be.
Yeah. So I don't want this to be a stream bashing her views per se, because we did start off talking about the tyranny of the majority, right? So let's start to that, or sorry, as it relates to the United States, right? Currently, as it is. So we brought up two pretty major issues. And so I was actually hoping maybe we'd get some of the opposition, because it seemed like Ham was pretty opinionated on this, and some of the other guys in the chat. When you mentioned suffrage for women being a bad idea because of their evolutionary strategy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, consumption, their maternal. Basically, I should say they're going to apply that type of evolutionary psychology to their politics. This is why many women are typically leftists, progressives, and borderline socialistic in their thinking, egalitarian in different words. So they're just going to apply that in our politics. And I think there's empirical data that will show this.
Yeah. So it's that maternal instinct of, oh, somebody's in trouble, we need to help them. So let's spend resources on helping them. Let's, you know,
Yeah,
let's
consumer.
vote to give those poor people who need help what they need. Whereas it's typically a more masculine trait to be more logical and less, emotional, in which case it's a situation when, if you're looking at parents, right? A mom, when their kid falls down and hurts himself, the mom's initial reaction is to go over there and console the child. Whereas the dad is like, no, 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 let him go play, let him hurt himself. That's how they learn. Dads will do crazy stuff that are kind of over the line, right? Right? Dads will let their kids play with power tools, not play, but use power tools and stuff. And when the mom's like, oh no, don't let them do that. They're going to hurt themselves, right? It's those difference of perspectives because, and it's a balance between the two that generally creates a well-rounded child or well-rounded adult after that child stops being a child. But it's generally the dad who provides that structure and is like, okay, no, we can't keep babying him because he'll never learn. We can't keep protecting him and giving him stuff because he'll keep. It's dad who usually puts the foot down and says, no, no, no. Right now, they need to learn on their own. They need to do it themselves. We can't keep
Yeah,
doing it for them.
what you're describing is a conservative world in political terms that, or more
Yes.
specifically, a libertarian world that a libertarian will produce things. And
Yes.
so the female and the offspring can consume these resources. It's up to the dad or the protector
Yeah.
um, to offer these resources.
Yeah. And so when it comes to vote, the people with the more maternal or paternal instincts, they're saying no, no, they've got to do it themselves or they'll never learn. Those are the people who are saying no, we need to cut down on welfare. We need to actually stop giving handouts. And then it's the women who have the more maternal is like no, no, why? What are you doing to these poor people who've done nothing wrong? They're crying out because they're in need and we need to give them stuff. But it's often the case, especially when it comes to government, that there is more need than there is supply. And actually, I think this is the case for life in general. It's like, yes, they're crying out because they're in need of something. We don't have enough of that whatever to go around for everybody. Or at
That's
least
why
to not even
I
need. Yeah.
Loudmouth. Do you want to say anything?
Not really.
So you can see this steady trend. This is something that a lot of people have pointed out. The steady trend in voting patterns overall since women were granted the right to vote. Now, see, this is where people are like, oh, well, they're just saying all this thing because they hate women, and they're like, oh, well, if we just, oh, they just want men to vote and no one else. Well, prior to that, men were granted universal suffrage, right? So, and I also have a problem with that endeavor because when the United States was first founded, the only people who could vote were property owners, people who owned a large holdings or monetary holdings or parcels of land. They were granted the right to vote. Okay, so that's what you meant by aristocracy, because that's what I wasn't quite sure, because that's a little bit of what started this. But yeah, that's what it started out as. It wasn't just every person, every man who's over the age of 18 gets the right to vote. It's like, no, you had to prove your value to the community, and you had to prove that you've got something to lose before you were granted the right to vote. Well, they extended that right to all white males above the age of 18. That was the first problem. Then they extended that voting right further, right? Because let's say I'm a little fuzzy on the time frame. Was it did they give black men the right to vote before they granted women the right to vote, or was it the other way around? I know it was fairly close to each other, like within a couple
No,
of
the
years.
15th Amendment that gave the forbidden racial discrimination in voting was passed long before the 19th Amendment that gave women full suffrage.
Okay.
But it's kind of a myth that amendment's passage was the first time women could vote. Women could actually vote in most
Yeah.
states prior to that. It's
Yes.
but that amendment made it a nationwide mandated thing.
Yes. So there were many states where women could vote either just by being women, because that was a state by state thing. But on the federal level, there were also women who could vote because they held enough land. They were property owners, business owners, things along those lines. Well, they got to vote at the federal level. So the universal suffrage from the 19th Amendment, yeah, so it was the 15th and 19th. Oh. Didn't realize they were that far apart. I thought it was like the 15th and 16th, but then again, my memory on the details I said was a little fuzzy. So, yeah.
Universal suffrage was a mistake. Big mistake. All democracy in general was a mistake. Right now, I think America is in a soft despotic state right now.
Well, and what you're saying, because this is actually, what we're following is a trend very similar to both the Roman Republic and the Greek republics. So the Roman, it's a little more obvious, or it's a little more pronounced in how fast it fell. Because that's what they started doing. So it started off as a republic, like a pure republic, and yes, they had a Caesar and the Senate, and the regular people did not vote, but the Senate senators had to get the approval of a large enough group of the people in order to actually hold a seat in the Senate. So this is similar to our system of voting for senators and House of Representatives. So in order to even get into the Senate to begin with, you had to be influential enough and have enough support from people to get in there. The vote was it wasn't like every person that was a member of the Roman Republic got a vote. But eventually they extended out and did exactly that. Every person that was in the Roman borders got a vote on who became a senator. And then you can see this pretty rapid decline because they started devaluing their currency, and this was voted on. It was not a policy that people were doing behind the scenes or were sneakily doing. The people actively voted for these things, and the Senate passed it based on what the people wanted. So they started devaluing their currency. They started importing what they called barbarians. So these were anybody who wasn't a natural-born Roman citizen. And then those people started influencing society and getting their own vote and their sway in society, in the way things were run. And the more and more democracy that they introduced into their society, the more that that every person's voice mattered, right? The more control that every person had on what every other person was supposed to do and how it was going to affect them, the more that society began to collapse. Had they stuck to their original republic format, that they could have stayed a lot, or that empire could have remained for a couple hundred or couple more centuries. But it fell within a matter of decades because they started opening all this control up to everybody. And the more democratic it became, the worse off everybody in that society was. That's what's described as the tyranny of the majority. And so, do you guys have anything else to add to that, or?
Like I said, I think America is in a stage of stop despotism, as Alexis de Tocqueville described in Democracy in America. Just giving our current state of American politics and giving how absurd it can be, and the very obvious corruption in Washington D.C. It just is very apparent. I might even argue that America is even an oligarchy now.
Yeah, I've heard that argument as well. So that's actually,
Hello.
Depending on your perspective, yeah, oligarchy definitely falls into place because you're looking at, so they have the Bush family and how so we've got these families that tend to control. So the Kennedys, like all the Kennedys have been politicians in one way or another and have been controlling things. You've got the Bush, the family and theirs, the Clintons, everybody that's surrounding them. There's also this bizarre thing. I don't know if how much truth there is to this or how closely tied, but
to be somewhat political dynasties in the even in the American system. I mean, here's the thing. I think it's no secret that when you're connected, there's a much better chance you'll get somewhere. Like Robin Thicke, his father was a famous actor, Alan Thicke. That's a big reason why he was able to get Alan, he was able to get into the industry a lot better. I think it works the same way with politics. I mean, if you have a family member who's a big politician and you want to get into politics yourself, that person can put in a good word for you, and you're on your way. It's called the good old boy system. I've heard it's called
nepotism. That's what that's called.
Nepotism. That's the correct term for it.
Correct.
I see.
You see that, in Hollywood, like how Will Smith casts his bratty-ass kid in every movie he's in.
I see.
Yeah. So
nepotism.
All right. So there are a couple of, I guess, scenarios or thought experiments. I guess I'm not sure exactly what these are hypothetical situations that kind of illustrate the fundamental problems that result from the tyranny of the majority or true democracies. So I've heard these brought up several times, and I don't know if this will be new to anybody here, but hopefully it is, because this was new to me, about 6 years ago when I heard them for the first time. So let's imagine there's a party. There's 10 people at the party, and a party goes on for a little bit longer than it planned, and then people start to get hungry. So they decide to order pizza for the party.
Hey guys, I gotta go. I gotta do a report.
Okay.
For tomorrow.
All right, good to see you, Hunter.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for the input, man.
All right.
So there's 10 people at this party. 4 of them didn't bring any money because they weren't expecting to pay for pizza. The other 6 did bring money, and 2 of those 6 brought $10 each. The other 6 only had $2 between them. Anyway, they pool all their money together. They order a pizza. So, at least everybody can get a slice of an extra large pizza or whatever. So, there's 10 people there, and they all decide to vote on what kind of pizza to get. So, 6 of them end up voting for a cheese pizza, and the other 4 voted for pepperoni pizza. That means that the whole party is now eating cheese pizza, even though 4 of this group didn't pay any money at all. And it was only 2 of the paying members who actually had a vote who actually voted for cheese pizza. And then the other 4, they had no say in it. I mean, basically their vote didn't count. And it's like, that's kind of a problem with our current system, or at least the way it's set up right now, where everybody gets a vote, even those people who aren't contributing via taxes. And that's why I said 4 of the people didn't bring money, because about 40% or maybe higher of the population pay nothing in taxes. And yet, they get to vote. So their vote holds a sway in whether we get cheese pizza or pepperoni pizza. And yet they've put nothing into the system. They've just showed up and voted. And the situation becomes a little... So, had those votes not been counted in this, this 10... So, 6 out of 10, that's a majority, right? But had it only been limited to people who had paid for the pizza, it would have actually been 4 versus 2. Because it would have been a total of 6 people who paid, and 2 people wanted cheese, sure. But the other 4 wanted the pepperoni, so they would have gotten pepperoni. And then the 2 would have paid for a pepperoni pizza that they didn't want. That creates... So even when you eliminate those people who haven't paid into the system, and you set the system up to just like, oh, well, I'm paying money for something, and I'm getting the opposite of what I actually want. That also creates a problem. Because even if everybody in the system was paying into it, people are going to be paying for something that they ultimately don't want. Like, say one of those people was a vegetarian, they put their money in for this pizza order, it's got pepperoni on it, they won't eat the pizza. Well, actually, they wouldn't eat the pizza anyway if it's cheese, right?
Right.
Yeah. So maybe they're vegetarian but not vegan.
I think there's
But
also like
so that's a slightly but or say they're allergic to pepperoni and that's why they didn't want pepperoni pizza and now that they've got pepperoni pizza they can't eat it but they paid their money in and now they got nothing to show for it.
hey, have you ever read Hapa, the Democracy, the God That Failed?
No, I haven't read any of Hapa yet. That's on my list of things to do.
Okay,
So
one of his arguments against democracy was that like during war, democracy, since World War One, that really brought out this liberal democratic age. It brought out total war, like deliberately targeting civilian populations, kind of thing. That was a horrible mistake, and the age of propaganda that came with it was also a horrible mistake. Like it, American soldiers and Mongol soldiers were heavily propagandized. Like they hated the Germans, and the Japanese as well. Like that really um, had really devastating psychological effects. When you have to that you have to propagandize the enemy to a ridiculous degree. Um, in World War One, the English, was propagandizing Germany, making it turn out the big devil, where they were killing babies and all this vile stuff. But that wasn't true. They didn't really commit that type of atrocities. One of Papa's more famous arguments is the destabilizing effect on democracy due to time preference. Like time preference is a economic concept for basically how much you're really wait for consumer goods. Well, basically that. And you argue that civilization, in order to achieve civilization, they need a lower time preference, essentially.
Not quite sure. So when you're talking about time preference in that regard, so is that like some people are willing to wait for what, like, so some people, they don't buy the latest and greatest. They don't buy the newest Xbox or the PS4. They'll wait till the next version comes out and then they'll get the previous generation. And they're perfectly fine with being behind the times because they can get it for cheaper that way. Like a lot cheaper. But everybody else seems to be like, oh, I need to have the cutting edge here and now. Is that what you're talking about on time preference, or is that a different phenomenon? Because I'm not sure what exactly you mean by time preference there.
Like time preference, like how much you're willing to wait for a consumer good or productions of goods.
Yeah, because like I was saying, so some people will be willing to wait till the Xbox One goes down in price before, or wait till the Xbox One comes out and then they'll go back and buy an original Xbox. And it doesn't matter if it's old technology because it's new to them because they've never, they're just waiting for the price to get within their, and they're willing to wait for years or whatever and constantly be behind everybody else. But they're willing to wait in that regard. But when it comes to politics, I'm not quite sure how that comes back.
Let me bring up a Mises article to explain this well, because I'm not explaining it too well.
Oh, is it more like a cost benefit analysis? Like, okay, I could have this right now, but if I wait for a little while longer, I could have this plus something else, right? Is that okay? So it's the marshmallow experiment, right? Where they gave children, they can have one marshmallow now, or if you can wait 5 minutes and you haven't eaten your marshmallow, then you can get two, right? And then some people have this is actually a pretty accurate way of figuring out whether these people are going to be successful or not, because the children in this thought experiment who actually opted to wait to get the two marshmallows, you could see it throughout, or they tracked them for the rest of their lives, and they ended up doing better pretty much across the board in every aspect of their life because they were willing to wait for what they wanted instead of just taking what was here and now.
Yeah, as I brought up this time period from Mises Wiki saying that time preference that low enough to allow for the production of capital goods initiates the process of civilization, a feedback loop where time preference it potentially decreases to the accumulation of capital and the increase the relative value of future goods. The further division of labor and lengthening of life expectancies. This process will continue indefinitely as long private property is respected. State violation of private property rights are continuous and perpetual. Therefore, the state acts as a destabilizing force upon society.
Huh. Okay, that's actually, yeah. So that's referring to, so that there's a recent example is this is the gun marches that are going on right now, right? We need safety now, and we'll take away your fundamental rights to do so, and we'll put all these extra regulations, and because they're thinking about the here and now and not the consequences of that action. They're thinking,
Yeah, like,
I need the guns to be banned now, so that way we can feel safer. But you're like, well, the long term effects of that can be devastating for the country if they actually succeed in getting guns banned, because then that eliminates a very powerful tool of self-defense and of community defense that concentrates power in the hands of the cops who are supposedly going around and killing black people just because they're black.
Papa's argument adds that politicians have a much higher time preference than an average entrepreneur or consumer, that they're more willing to make stupid and reckless decisions to be reelected. This is one of the flaws of one of the malincentives of term limits.
So an actual argument against term limits.
Yeah, like this is why we see stupid decisions in foreign policy, domestic policy here in the United States.
Because politicians will often institute a policy that gives out money to this particular group or whatever. It's like, elect me and I will give you free, like, what was this, the Obama cell phone, right? Hey, elect me and you'll get a free cell phone from the government if you're,
when my Idiocracy video went viral, okay, there were some people who didn't like my opinions on it, and one person said the way to stop Idiocracy is to continue education funding and increase it, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't understand Idiocracy at all, did you? If that's the conclusion you came to.
Yeah, let's just throw more money at the problem. Wait,
yes,
what?
Throw more money at the problem. That's totally what Idiocracy was about. That is totally what caused the end of civilization in Idiocracy. No, that is not what did. First of all, no matter how much money you throw at teaching a dog algebra, they cannot understand it. All right, and that's the case with a lot of these kids. A lot of them are just too fucking stupid to understand this shit. I'm sorry, you're not gonna increase funding for education and fix that problem.
Yeah, and that's the huge problem that I'm seeing right now with our universities, is because everybody gets to go to university.
And that's why you got all these people who are barely functional adults, essentially diapered babies in adult bodies, are somehow in universities. It's scary.
Yeah, well, they're somehow in universities, and because the universities don't want to kick them out because they like making money, they are lowering the curriculum. They're lowering the standards for everybody who's attending, so that way those other people, like those people who barely passed high school are now passing college courses. So all it's doing is dumbing down the college courses to the lowest common denominator, and the people who would have benefited from college are now not benefiting at all because the stuff that they're learning, and like, dude, this is mindless, boring crap that I could have learned in 5 minutes of reading out on my own. Now I gotta take 4 months of this. Yeah, screw this.
What was it? I actually heard that there's a college major on obesity studies. I'm not even fucking kidding. That teaches you about health biases in society. Fuck off, okay? You're not gonna. all right, you're not going to be seen as as attractive. Okay, you're not going to get as many opportunities. All right, if your dream is to be a roadshow stripper, all right, gaining 100 pounds is going to be seriously detrimental to that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's that's another example of politicians who are handing out student loans. Like, yeah, we need to give you guys money, and who cares how we're going to pay for it in the long run? Who cares about the detrimental effects that are kind of inevitable when something is no longer exclusive or no longer scarce? If you remove the scarcity behind colleges and universities, you remove the benefit of those. It used to be hard to get into college. It used to be hard to pay for college. Well, I mean, actually, it used to be easier to pay for college than it is now because college was affordable. Now, the only way to pay for college is you have to have some kind of loan or something to help you pay for it. People used to be able to pay for it just by working a job over the summers or a part-time job while they were attending school. That's impossible nowadays. But the people who were in college got more of a benefit out of it. And,
but college is a ripoff today. That's a big thing. All right, the value of a degree is dramatically decreased, okay, whereas the costs have increased, okay? There's really no point for most people to go to college.
Yeah. So the politicians were like, let's make it easier for the people with bad grades to get in.
Because that sounds so good, doesn't it, in your campaign commercials. I worked so hard to make sure more of your kids went to college. All right? Fight it. Blah, blah, blah. I am fighting for you.
And they don't think about the long-term effects as, all these people who aren't college material are going to college, and in order for them to get their money's worth or to not sue the college is lowering the standards of what it takes to get a degree, and those degrees are becoming more worthless. But by then, that politician who made student loans guaranteed by the federal government, that politician's long gone. And well, hey, that's somebody else's problem, right? Well, I did my thing. I got elected. I made everybody happy. I got all the perks of being in office, and they probably have like a retirement, because what is a retirement in the Senate? It's something stupid like 8 years. Right, or maybe less, 6 to 8 years for a full retirement if you're a member of Congress.
Oh shit, I forget.
I don't think there's no term limits in the House of Representatives.
No, not term limits. I'm saying in order to be eligible for a full retirement, right? How many years do you need to serve in Congress?
10 years, 20 years.
No, it's not 20. No, it's nowhere near 20. 20 is military. In Congress, it is ridiculous. It's like 2 terms, I think. I'll look that up real fast. I know it is. Okay.
Okay. Says vet planted heroin and puppies for Columbia drug ring. What an asshole. That's
okay.
Fuck this person.
It looks like 5 years.
5 years. Cool.
5 years in Congress, and you get your full pension. So, okay, full pension is available to members 62 years of age with 5 years of service, 50 years or older with 20 years of service, or 25 years of service at any age. But a guaranteed retirement if you served 5 years in Congress. That's unheard of everywhere else. So if you're a politician and you're like, hey, I need to get my 5 years so that way I've got my set retirement, a good way to get that is, let's say, hey, I'm going to give out money for your school so your kids can get the education and they'll get better jobs. But I really love the way that this is stated. I forget who stated it. Said, yes, people who went to college, they earned more money in their lifetime. But saying that, oh, well, in order for you to earn more money in your lifetime, you need to go to college, is like saying everybody in the NBA is tall. So if you want to get taller, join the NBA.
Yeah, that's a brilliant metaphor, actually. Right there.
The people who went to college in the past...
Correlation versus causation, essentially.
Yeah, the people who went to college in the past and had better paying careers due to their life's choices, they were going to be successful with or without college. They were already on track. These were the straight A students. These were the people who, who sacrificed things early on in their life and, were willing to go the extra mile at the work. They've already gone above and beyond their peers at that point. So of course they're going to make more money in their lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly B's in high school myself.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that right now universities and colleges mostly worthless, but trade schools are still pretty good investments.
Yeah.
So if you're planning on going to a college, go to a trade school where you learn a profession, and they are usually better at getting away from all of the social justice and all of the unnecessary, boring BS that universities and colleges will try to drag you down with. So,
trade school.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just wonder, you see like college kids act like total fucking idiots, and I'm like, what kind of degree are these people learning? What is the purpose that these kids are wasting their money on?
Or their parents' money's on.
Yeah, usually it's their parents' money, which is one step removed from the responsibility.
Yeah, but I mean, don't their parents object to their money being wasted on their kids becoming total fucking assholes?
No, again, we're going back to the maternal instinct.
I was busting my balls paying for my kid's education, and I found out he was acting like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I made arrangements. Called the local McDonald's. I've made arrangements for you, kid.
Yeah, but you're thinking you're thinking like a man. Remember, it has become kind of, society has shifted to think more like women. That's right. So it's like, oh no, it's okay if my poor baby wastes his time and waste my money. It's like, oh, but that's my baby boy. That's my baby girl. I can't let them suffer or It's the Cartman's mom, right?
Speakers over nothing,
Yeah, it's the Cartman's mom syndrome. Like, I know Cartman, the South Park is a cartoon, but you know that mom it's an exaggeration, but not by much.
No, not by much at all.
Those women are out there, and they're creating monsters like Cartman. That's like all these social justice warriors kids, all these Antifa kids. That's their mom. Their mom is Cartman's mom. Their mom is creating these monsters. by babying them, oh, they've never done anything wrong. Everything they do that is horrible and evil, they find some excuse. That's the generations that they're raising. And in the situation where Cartman, he's only like a fourth or fifth grader or something like that. But imagine like that same mentality through his entire life, growing up, getting to college. Do you think that mom is then going to hold back and be like, well, I paid for all of his college and I'm working 2 jobs to keep him there and he's wasting his money and he's not learning anything? Do you think they're going to change?
Cartman, he's pretty much a young psychopath.
Yeah. And so do you think a mom that raised that type of child is, once they're in college, then they're going to wake up and be like, oh, well, now I can't keep giving you stuff? No, they're going to keep...
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, in terms of psychopathy, how much of it's they're just born psychopaths, or whether, like you said, narcissistic, bad parenting leads to them becoming that. Who knows?
I would... Yeah, it's hard to tell. Because they say that psychopaths are natural, sociopaths are created. I don't think that's the case anymore. I used to agree with that.
I read studies, and they showed that it can be measurable in the brain. All right, when they show a normal person grotesque images, and they compare the brain scans of a normal person versus a psychopath, there's a vastly difference in their brain chemistry.
Yeah. So
So
I think there is some degree of biology in that, yes. But I think because of the number that has been increasing, like, so this is something I brought up in a previous stream. I'm looking for a root cause at the moment, but I haven't come up with a good. But there definitely seems to be a rapid increase in the number of psychopaths and sociopaths in society as a whole.
Is there really, or are they just diagnosed or recognized more?
That's it's very difficult to tell.
Keep in mind, psychopaths are often, they're not like, people often have like a Hollywoodized perception of them, that they're like a bunch of slasher killers.
Well, yeah, it's because of the Hannibal Lecter view.
Most of them are not violent criminals, and a lot of them can hide what they are from people. Even people close to them are often totally unaware of what they are.
Even most of the time, they might be unaware of what they are. So there's a lot of...
They are, and that's the main thing. They're aware, but they see people who are empathetic, they see them as chumps, all right? That's in their minds. They don't see themselves as sick. They see themselves as, like, superior than others because they don't have empathy. They see people who are empathetic as, like, crybabies or weaklings.
Yeah. So maybe in that regard, I could be one of those people. I've never been professionally diagnosed. That might be my case. I'm like, man, I'm hearing these people on our Twitter chat. I'm like, oh, you guys are a bunch of fucking retards. I'm like, well, maybe that's why. Because I'm like, oh, maybe I can't empathize with them in that regard.
I mean, no, I mean...
Or maybe they're just stupid. Maybe they're just stupid.
You have to understand some lack of empathy is necessary for every person to function, because the amount of misery and unhappiness in this world is so overwhelming that if you really spent all your time thinking about it and drowning in it, you would have a really miserable life. Some level of kind of emotional detachment is really necessary to survive.
Yeah. Okay. Then I don't feel so bad at, calling Ham and Vanguard morons and retards.
Likewise, in your backyard right now, there's probably 2 ant colonies going to war with each other, or one ant colony rips the other ant colony apart. But do you rank with yourself with empathy of those poor ants that are ripping themselves apart? No, if you're like most people, you don't give a shit.
Yeah, because they're ants. They're piss ants.
Yeah, no one cares. Even though essentially they are every one of them, all the billions of them that live in your backyard at any given time, they are living creatures with a central nervous system.
Yeah.
But again, you just don't care about them. Because you have to not care about them, because if you did, you wouldn't have a decent life. Yeah, imagine living your whole life worried about them.
Yeah, you'd be overwhelmed by all of the suffering that exists just all around you. Yeah,
exactly. You'd be overwhelmed by it. So some level of emotional detachment and not giving a shit, lack of empathy, is necessary for any human being to function and live a normal life.
Yeah, okay.
Like people like me, autistic people, all right, we actually over-empathize, and that's actually our biggest problem in life. The reason why autistic people often have issues controlling their anxiety, and issues with their emotions, is because they're too empathetic. All right, and it stresses them out.
Gotcha.
So that's why I get angry if somebody there seems to be a perception that autistic people can't empathize. They can, and they do. All right, they express their empathy differently, but they do empathize just as much as anyone else in a proper way.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Because I think that's a... All right. So steering the conversation a little bit more back to the core topic of today's video. So I brought up the first example with the people at the party where everybody gets a vote and very few people actually get what they want. And oftentimes it's not the majority of the people. Well, it depends on how you set aside that majority, right? in an ideal scenario for that pizza scenario, everybody would just get their own pizza with whatever toppings they wanted, and they'd pay for it themselves. That's same, because then everybody gets exactly what they want, and the people, people who didn't pay any, well, they don't get a say in it, so they don't get to override anybody else's decision. So taking that same example and kind of elaborating it on it a little more. So imagine 10, either the same people or maybe different people later on, are at a restaurant. And let's say you are one of those 10 people. You don't have much money, and so you just order a water and a small salad, something that's going to cost less than $5. The other people at the table, they're ordering lobster, the steak, $20 meals and all that, but your meal should only come out to $5. There's 10 total people at the table, and once the bill comes out, they all take a vote to have one person pay for the entire meal, and they're just going to vote on whoever that one person is. Or no, actually, I think the first scenario is, so they vote that the entire order be paid for by one person, and you would obviously not pay for this, or vote for this, because your meal only $5, that's all you were planning on covering, because you're on a budget. So, but if 9 of them, or even if 6 of the 10 voted that one person cover the bill, that kind of counts, that's not in your favor, right? So even if they choose whoever that one person is at random to pay for the bill, well, you've got a choice of, okay, maybe it's my name in that hat and they draw my name. Well, if that's the case, then I'm definitely not going to vote, because I have a potential of paying for everybody's meal, even though I only wanted to pay for $5 tonight, right? So it could be, let's say the total bill for everybody at the table is $150, and you plan on only paying, your portion is only $5 of that, yet they're all taking this vote to have you pay for it.
I gotta go crash.
Okay.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah. So the 10 people at the table, well, there's some people at the table who had $20 orders, and so, hey, they've got a chance of not paying anything at all. So maybe it's in their best interest to vote to have somebody else, because even if their name is drawn from the hat, oh well, they're going to pay an extra $130, but they had a chance of paying nothing at all. So
Yeah.
that creates this disincentive scenario. So this is similar to the pizza scenario, but with a little added emphasis on the portion that each person is paying into the system. So I think the third version of this particular example is, okay, so the point of that scenario is to emphasize that, yeah, it's not very fair to the person who chose a meal for $5, was doing everything right, and now they have a chance of paying for the entire table, because of a vote that they didn't want. Taking that example, I think the third version of it is, instead of it being a random name drawn from the hat, it's actually voted on who pays. So they take a vote at the table to see who is actually going to pay for everything. So if you end up ordering your $5 salad or whatever, but you know that 3 of these people, or actually I think it would need to be 4 people at the table, because we're talking about a group of 10. So, but 4 of the people at the table, they don't really like you. And all 4 of them decide to vote for you and none of themselves, right? And then everybody else at the table, the other 6 votes get kind of, spread around randomly. So even though you didn't get the majority of the vote, right, you only got 1 of 6. Sorry, no, scratch that. Okay, so there's 6 votes that are just for one person, and then there's 4 votes for you. So even though 4 is not the majority of the 6, that 4 is more than anybody else at the table got, and so you end up paying the bill for the entire table. So not only were you outnumbered in the vote to see if one person should pay for the entire bill, but you didn't even win what would be a majority of what's the word I'm looking for? It's still a majority, but it's not the it's not even half of 10, right? You still have the majority because yours was the largest number of votes or you had 4 people vote for you to pay for the bill. But that's not half or more of the actual 10 people at the table. So that is also an unfair system that does occur in our current voting process right now. Because all of those because this happens with third party votes for president, right? So Donald Trump got maybe 40-ish% of the vote. He didn't get more than 50.
One thing I know about the 2016 election is like a lot of people didn't really vote for both candidates. Like it was a very low voter turnout. That's
essentially what this argument is kind of illustrating the problem, because of the potential voters, only about half of them actually vote. 50% of them actually vote. Of that 50% that voted, right, that means that there's only about a quarter of the country voted for the president. That's not a majority, but it's still a majority. It's still treated as if it's a majority because it's the largest number of votes for a particular presidential candidate. That is a huge problem that occurs with the Democratic voting style. But the funny thing is, we don't do that on or at least I don't know about you and your friends, but usually when you go to a restaurant, you split the bill. Unless somebody volunteers to pay for the entire party or pay for multiple people at the table. Like if you go to say, hey, if it's somebody's birthday, usually somebody will say, hey, I'm paying for the birthday boy or something like that. But that's not how, when you go to a restaurant and you're out with a bunch of friends, this scenario doesn't actually happen. And yet it's what we choose to actively engage in for everything else when it comes to democracy. Right? If you just want the military, and you're like, oh, well, I'm happy to pay for the military. I'm happy to pay my $5 for the military or whatever. That's the equivalent of the $5 for the salad in the restaurant scenario. And if other people are like, oh, but I also want universal health care, and I also want Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare, and I also want Social Security, and I also want all this other stuff, and they rack up this huge bill, and then they vote, and, oh, crap. Now you're paying more than your $5 because you're paying a larger portion of this. Oh, that was it. So I think I slightly messed up. So the middle scenario is they voted to split the bill evenly. Sorry. That was the mistake I made. So in the second scenario where you just get your $5 salad and everybody's ordering stuff and the bill comes out to $150, the table is voting to split the bill evenly amongst everybody. The third scenario is where they're voting for one particular person to pay for the bill. So that was how the argument was presented to me in the first place. But again, like I said, I'm trying to remember broad concepts and not get too stuck up on the details. But yeah, so that's what we do with our government. It's like, well, now you're paying. You only wanted to pay your $5 share of the $150 bill, but now you're paying the full 15 because you're paying for all the other stuff that they wanted to order and then split with you. That's what happens with government. And when it comes to the situation like the third scenario of the restaurant where they're paying for one individual, or they're voting to see which one individual would pay for it, well, that's when you consider taxation and how inversely it affects the 1%, right? The rich people, the top 2% of the United States taxpayers pay for like 80% of the government stuff. It's insane. I don't know if it's exactly 80%. I'll have to look up the exact numbers, but it is I do know that the bottom 50% of taxpayers, they don't even pay for 10% of government funding, of the government's budget.
Hey, hey, S-Man.
Oh, hey, just reading the description. So you guys are talking about socialism and democracy?
Yes. So
Okay.
we're talking about the
yeah.
tyranny of the majority, and I brought up a couple of scenarios to illustrate that.
Did
The
you guys talk
problems
about
that
a scenario that was correct? Did you guys talk about the Electoral College, which was used to prevent tyranny of the majority?
we've talked about that on previous streams. We've talked about the
Oh, I mean,
electoral
between you
college. Yeah.
two.
Oh.
Between you two. I don't know what Freddie's take on the Electoral College is, but
I absolutely love it.
Okay.
yeah. In fact, it's kind of funny when you see like it looks like a landslide in one election, but you look at the popular vote and it's like it ain't that far apart. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if my type of government would be a democracy or what have you. I'm just for a minarchist type government. But
So, like a Watchman state.
yeah, but I don't know if that would be considered a democracy. But I maybe it is, but it wouldn't be like a pure democracy.
So,
like.
Yeah, I don't think a minarchist government cannot be considered a democracy. Because if it's a democracy, there's no way to keep it minarchist. Because
there's no way to keep it contained.
Yeah, because if it was a democracy, anything that people want to vote on, they can. They can vote to increase the size of government. They can vote to start adding healthcare to it. They can vote. There's no limitations on that. The only way to create a minarchist is it has to be a republic. There has to be. These are the only things the government does. You can vote on those. You can vote on how the government does that. But those are the only things the government does.
Yeah, as for, and for instance, in California, I don't know about other states, but in California, they can vote on whether or not to abolish certain laws or instill certain laws. Like, they voted, it was by the skin of its teeth that the death penalty in California survived. They voted to ban gay marriage 14 years ago. To me, I don't want people to be able to vote to ban the right of two people to get married. Like I thought it was stupid that people could vote on that. In my state, my state does it too. Other states do it. Like we can vote on a referendum, but there's certain things I don't think should be voted on. Like we don't vote on whether or not it's okay to gas the Jews or something. We don't vote on whether or not it's okay to have a postnatal abortion happen to Ham. There's just certain things I don't think should be
we vote on it, but we don't actually do anything about the vote. I mean, that vote has passed several times in the chat, but we're not actually going to follow through with it. It's
yeah.
Oh, speaking of gassing the Jews, does they remember the Weimar Republic? That was like a horrible, horrible example of having a despotic republic or democracy.
I'm gonna actually do a Twitter poll and see how the group chat
posts. What, you actually doing a vote in Twitter?
Yeah, a Twitter poll. Let's see how it goes. Only 2 options. 7 days.
Make it yes or hell yes. Those are the only 2 options.
Oh shit! Let me do that. I'll just put do it in all caps and the other ones.
Do it.
Do it. Oh my god.
All right. Yeah, well, Twitter's gonna shut you down for advocating violence against a particular group, right? Because the only reason you would do that is because Ham is gay. It's obviously homophobic to even have that poll. I'm like, no, it's because he's an asshole. It's because. Wait, now is he an asshole because he's gay, or is he gay because he's an asshole?
I just think.
I think he's probably just gay because he's an asshole, but that's his thing. That's fine. But
right?
Yeah, I always thought it was silly to have people being able to vote on certain things. Like, I'm not trying to restrict anyone's right to vote. I'm just saying there's certain things we shouldn't be able to vote on. Like, I don't want people to be able to vote in favor of, I don't know, sending our country to war. Whether or not to kill certain people. Like a ton of people do not like the Iraq War. Like, at first, 90% of the nation was on board. I think my dad may have been, and my mom was always against it. But over time, when they saw that this is actually not for the reasons they've stated, or it's just not going the way it's supposed to, people were like, "Yeah, this war's bullshit," and it resembled Vietnam with how unpopular it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the only government that can really work out is a minarchist government, considering that you don't have to be all secretive. You don't have to waste taxpayer money. Well, they do it just.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they're just greedy fuckers. A movie that, since Freddie likes to quote books and tell us to go read these books, watch the movie. What the fuck is it called? It's a really good movie. If an ANCAP saw it, they'd be like, this movie proves the dangers of statism. The movie is Enemy of the State. It's from 1998. It's a little less than 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Pretty good movie.
Yeah. Will
I'm not
Smith
gonna
and
lie,
Gene Hackman, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman, Will Smith. It is terrifyingly, kind of seems very true. One of the dudes in there, he looks like Dick Cheney. He really does. It's terrifying. I'm like,
oh, Dick Cheney? I thought he was dead.
oh no, he's still alive.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit though.
So the stuff that was kind of like science fiction or like over the top conspiracy theory in that movie, you're like, there's the stuff that Snowden leaked and the stuff that a bunch of other people leaked about the NSA. Oh yeah, that they're doing that right now.
Maybe that movie was
doing
a warning
exactly what the crazy conspiracy of Enemy of the State. Oh yeah, they're doing that.
Yeah.
It's like they took that movie and they decided, oh, you know what, that's a pretty good game plan. Let's do that. Well, it makes me wonder. So this is something else I've noticed is the people on the left and the people who tend to be running things. It seems like they are copying fiction. The art emulates life, and then life emulates art, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me as if the people who are running the majority of things take that like to the extremes. So what I mean, things that used to be pure comedy and like extreme exaggerations, or like Enemy of the State being crazy conspiracy type stuff. It seems like the left take those and makes them reality. And so I'm actually starting a series. Well, hopefully I'm starting a series. I do need to get that AIU video. Oh, it's such a nightmare. So much content that there's so many. I was amazed at how much video content there was, and a lot of it is courtesy of Uzalu, because he has a website so he set up a website, has all this video, has all this documentation of all the things that AIU did. So he, basically consolidated in one place. And
wait, you're making a video on atheism is unstoppable or autism is unstoppable?
Yeah. So it's about his doxing and all of that sort of thing, because I got into a thing with bearing over that, and
Oh man.
Yeah.
I wish you could bring a democratic socialist in this chat right now.
I do. Secular Hawk would never agree with it. Me and Humane were just fucking roasting this dude alive. It was so damn funny. Like the dude was like, "We don't invade countries for their oil. We do it for humanitarian reasons, dickhead." And I'm just like, "No, we don't."
No, we don't.
And
Actually,
not very humanitarian of us to go in.
Saying that most of the military intervention was due to the basis of humanitarian reasons, but that sort of involved taking their resources.
And
If we were there for humanitarian resources, we wouldn't go in to destabilize their entire country and leave the country worse off than when we found it. How humanitarian is that of us to go in, destroy Iraq, get rid of their government, and then leave them financially destitute and like having a lower living standard than when we started that? Very, very humanitarian of us, right? To make them worse off after a 10-year war.
Yeah, and I mentioned Pinochet and the fact we backed a coup that overthrew that government.
Wait. On Chile, the United States was barely involved in Chile.
Well, Nixon supported a coup, so
No, he didn't.
there was a CIA-backed coup.
No, it wasn't CIA. It wasn't a CIA-backed coup. They were barely involved in that. Leftists often do this. They over-exaggerate the involvement in the CIA. It was the reason why the coup happened was due to Allende's poor statesmanship.
Well, that's not a justification to do a coup. If you're
So who gave armaments to Pinochet? Who gave them financial support? How did he just did the coup all on his own dime, all with his own armaments? That doesn't seem accurate.
I read Henry Kissinger memoir, and he has a chapter on Chile, and he just said they were barely involved in that.
Well, that's what Henry Kissinger is going to say. Why would he say how involved he actually was? Of course, he's going to downplay it. That's what they do.
If I was Nixon, I'd of course downplay. Well, he never really had to address what he did in Chile, well, with the involvement they did have, because he died less than 22 years after the coup occurred, and people call that the first 9/11 because it happened incidentally on September 11th, 1973. And I brought this up to Secular Hawk, and he's like, I don't see what the problem is with the United States, or what's the problem, like, what's so bad about war crimes? And I'm like, this fucker's either a Poe or oh my god.
He's a Poe. He's a troll, man.
I found Freddy's channel here because he did a video called No Secular Hawk. FDR did not end the Great Depression. And he thinks that FDR extended the Great Depression. We were actually discussing the Great Depression in world civilization. My teacher was all saying it happened because of the Great Depression occurred due to overproduction and people all pulling their money out of the stock market at the same time. And they did
overproduction. We have too much stuff. We have too much stuff. Oh no!
Couldn't sell it, and long story short, because he went on this fucking diatribe, I'm like,
that doesn't make any sense. Overproduction. Oh no, we've made too much stuff.
And people weren't buying.
Why weren't people buying enough? Oh, because there was a monetary crunch, which was inevitable when you're using fractional reserve banking. And you're overprinting money, making money worth less and less.
So are you in favor of the gold standard?
Yes.
Yeah, it ended 40 years ago, and people, to me, I think it is a good idea to use the gold standard, so you can't print money willy-nilly. It has to be backed by something.
Because what happened is they overprinted money, so that way there was a lot of money, so people thought that the economy was doing much better than it actually was. But then when the money actually reevaluates based on how much stuff there is, which is what the stock market crash inevitably is. It's all of this stuff that we thought was worth something is now worthless. It's just extra money and so money has to reevaluate based on how much product there is. So if there is 100 of something and there's $100, if you add another $100, that doesn't make whatever it was worth now 200. No, instead now that 100 of whatever is now worth $50 each. Right? It halves in value the more you print. Right? I may have misstated that, but the more money you add to the system, it reduces the value of whatever by half because now there's more money in the system to spend it on.
On FDR, the value. I think he confiscated gold, and I think that caused a devaluation of the currency.
Yes. So he confiscated gold. There was that under Nixon was the last of the confiscation of gold, and when we officially went off the gold standard.
Yeah.
But it was
technically after World War II, we were on the Bretton Woods system. Americans at the time still couldn't legally own gold at the time, but they were still
Yeah, he was doing executive orders FDR was doing executive orders to try and get people to hand over gold, which I think is wrong to do. I mean, there's a lot of things I have criticisms of FDR for. It's been alleged he knew about the Nazi regime executing Jews under Hitler's final solution since November of 1942. There was interning Japanese people in the internment camps, that type of thing.
Which, considering that none of them actually ended up getting gas chambered or anything like that, they might have been safer inside of the concentration camps than had they been outside. So that one's a little. It is definitely an unjust thing to do, but man, it's hard to say whether they were worse off or better off because of that. Because I know a lot of them came back to destroyed homes, destroyed businesses. They lost all of their property that they had built up, any of their possessions that they weren't able to take with them to that camp. They weren't going to see it again.
Yeah.
So
the dropping of the go ahead.
But had they not been sent to that concentration camp, whoever came in to raid their business and destroy it and steal all their stuff could have easily taken their lives with them as well. So I don't know if that was. It's hard to say whether that was for their protection ultimately, but either way, what they should have done is just provided protection for those American citizens who they thought were right. Provide police escorts and stuff like that.
One thing I think will be more easy to justify was when Truman dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, that
one I think would be easier to justify, considering that if we would have invaded Japan, there'd be a lot more casualties.
Yeah,
as compared to like if we just dropping those 2 bombs.
Yeah. The casualty that war could have extended for years, and at the rate people were dying, the amount of people that died in 2 days because of atomic bombs, we could have. I mean, it would have been, depending on how many years that had gone on, or the war could have been extended. That number could have easily been exceeded by tenfold. During the length of a war, it's.
So it seems that you favor a certain sort of ethics, one emphasizing the effects rather than the means.
I'm more to
that depends. So, if the means are immoral in and of themselves, right? There's already a war going on. In wars, people die. In wars, weapons are used. So there's nothing immoral in a war about using an atomic bomb. If there is something immoral about using an atomic bomb, there's something immoral about using a grenade in a war.
Well, there is something immoral about that. War is generally to be avoided.
I agree with Lapis, like it should be like an ultimate last resort.
Yes.
But there is even arguments that the United States could have avoided the dropping of the atomic bombs in Hiroshima.
Yeah. It's been alleged that people were trying to surrender, but they weren't able to, or something like some people were attempting to surrender, but they were not. They would either be killed or something wasn't. They weren't allowed somehow.
Well, yeah, the emperor. The emperor was not allowing.
Surrender. The last surrender, the one after the second atomic bomb drop, had to evade a horde of fanatics who wanted to keep Japan in the war.
And there was further attacks the United States was planning, but we eventually were like, 2 bombs. They got the hint that we're not afraid to just take them out. And I'm not saying.
So,
I think that was one way we could just end it faster than. And they had an unconditional surrender.
Yeah.
And that really says a lot when you weakened your enemy to the point where it's no condition required for them to surrender.
Okay. So let's go back to the point where you're saying war should be avoided. Yes, but when it's already happening, how are you going to avoid a war when it's already been going on for several years? That doesn't make any sense.
You do it by avoiding things that could escalate the war unnecessarily.
No. We were already in a war.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about generally. And generally, if you want to avoid a war getting worse, you avoid being the one to step up the devastation of the war, such as avoiding using chemical weapons, avoiding using nuclear weapons when you're already at war with someone.
There's some wars I think you could argue that we could only win if we were to use weapons like that or some way to wipe them off the face of the earth. I mean, like Vietnam. It's not, like I think you could argue Vietnam if we would have used nuclear weapons, or I'm not saying let's do that, but
Vietnam. If you had done that, then that would have defeated the purpose of the war in Vietnam, which was to secure the South Vietnamese puppet government.
Yeah, and
Science state.
Puppet government.
And
yeah.
It's interesting to kind of see that the Truman Doctrine, kind of brought us into the Vietnam War a bit.
Yeah.
Because the Truman Doctrine was to defeat communism wherever it appears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, philosophically, as much as I dislike communism, if your country wants to go to communism, all right, it's just we're not going to help you at that point.
Wait. Communism. Why do you want communism to be spread all over the world? I mean,
That's
I-
not
no,
what I
it's
thought. That's not what I. That's not what I
Yeah.
said in the
It
slide.
was a bit of a dishonest representation.
Nah, I'm sorry.
It's a total straw
I
man.
read
But
myself
anyway,
for you, but why you?
Okay.
Why you're
No.
perfectly okay having communist
if
states?
a country wants to do it, then as long as they don't force it on others, that's fine. The minute they
Oh.
try to force if they were to try and
See,
force
that's
us
the
to go to
problem.
communism,
They are forcing it onto their own citizens.
I mean, if they're killing their own citizens,
No,
like,
they're
that's
forcing
the case.
communism onto their citizens because not everybody in the society agreed to communism.
Not everyone in this society agrees to capitalism.
Hey, the system
Okay.
works.
Oh God.
Okay, so not
anyway.
everybody in this society agrees to capitalism, but capitalism is the system that was here when this country was founded. It's not a system that's going from one form of government to another, which is what happens when communism takes over. It went from
It's
what
kind of
was
an
there
arbitrary argument.
to something new.
It's kind of an arbitrary argument.
How is that an arbitrary argument? That's like saying
Because
I'm going to
it's
go.
like saying
so,
that a transition from monarchy to republicanism is enforcing republicanism on
yes,
those who want monarchy. You would concur with that?
I would
That any
concur with
change was
that.
force?
Yes,
Okay.
that was a force.
I see. Well, that's an interesting perspective.
Was that not force? If it wasn't force, then why did they need to hold the king at sword point in order to get him to sign the Magna Carta? I'm sorry.
Well, that didn't get rid of monarchy in England.
No,
That
it didn't
was,
get rid of the monarchy, but that was the first step towards getting the Magna Carta. Was a huge reduction in the monarchy's power.
Yeah, although the king did reject it after he escaped the nobles, and then they started a huge civil war in England.
Yes.
That's besides the point. That was justified. The force in that was justified because
Yes.
it was resisting the force of the monarchy, the private tyranny
Yes.
of one man.
And so,
It's-
are you saying that it's justified to use to institute communism?
Well, depends on what you mean by institute communism. And what
Okay,
you mean by
so-
communism. Because I view capitalism as a system of force, of exploitation.
Okay, force and exploitation are two separate things. Is it both? Or
Yes.
Okay. So that doesn't make any sense to me unless you're talking about are you talking about the way that capitalism is instituted in the United States or just capitalism by itself? Like the idea of capitalism is inherently forceful and exploitative.
Well, I'd say both are true because the United States enforced its economic, designs on a people that didn't necessarily want it, namely the indigenous people of America.
Okay.
That's exactly what happened. We forced it upon them to stick to our society, and we just took all of their stuff. All right, if that's your understanding of American history as a whole, I don't think we can make any progress in that regard.
Well, you have to that's a very silly argument that because we have a different understanding of American history, we can't proceed to have a discussion about where
if you
wrong.
refuse to accept that the Native Americans didn't occupy the entirety of the United States, they only occupied sections of it, because if you look at the actual numbers of Native Americans, they could all fit in one state, not Texas. They could all fit in a state, say, like the size of Missouri.
That doesn't mean taking their territory
So,
is justified.
No, it's not their fucking territory if they're not in it.
But they did inhabit it. Just
They
loosely
inhabited
inhabited
small sections of it.
Would
How
you
can
say that a landlord who owns a massive estate
different?
of 5 miles doesn't inhabit it because he's only one man in such a large area and is
That-
constantly moving around his estate.
Well,
That
for
is-
one, the property owner got a legitimacy and the backing of the state government or municipality or whatever. So
It's different because that property owner has laid claim to that entire area, and that claim is recognized by not just him, but all the people around him. Whereas the claim that the Native Americans had to all of the United States was not recognized by anybody, not even by the Native Americans themselves.
Well, the native peoples, it depends on the native peoples. All of them had very different cultures and very different interpretations of what property was.
No, they didn't even they didn't respect other tribes' property, and so if that was the case, then each tribe would have their own area of the country, and that would be theirs, and no one else would be able to enter that area. And yet they're constantly taking over, not only invading other people's actual setups, their actual, like, where they had their teepees and where they had all their children and family. They're constantly invading each other, and they're constantly going into other people's territory. This is not something unique to the United States. What?
Right? When civilizations are nomadic, when they're constantly moving around,
Yes.
it's inevitable that moving groups will, bump into other moving groups. Just because their land was nomadic does not justify the conquest.
That doesn't make any sense. So they are nomadic, and yet you're claiming that they own all of the United States. Yeah, that's the exact opposite of what the.
I'm saying that.
Okay, well then what did we take?
Collective territory.
No, so if they didn't own the United States, then how did we take their stuff?
They wouldn't really have had a North American concept of property.
Okay, so if they were a nomadic tribe, they wander around and they don't make any claim to anything, then how do we take their stuff if they don't think it's theirs?
You made them move forcibly.
They were already doing that.
To another, to another, to another.
We made them do what they were already doing?
No, you enforced them on a separate path. You made them stay in places like reservations. Have you ever heard of the Trail of Tears?
Yes. But they were doing that prior to colonist influence. They were already roaming around, yes.
Being kept out of areas and forced into an increasingly small enclosure.
That's what happens when some people claim property and other people don't.
So your argument seems to be that because the European notion of property, i.e., that that is something to be claimed, and not something that is just kind of belongs to everyone, and that we're going to
don't give me this that some people claim property and others don't, because they had tents, they had tools, those weren't communal. Their clothing, their tents, they had bows and arrows that were theirs and were not part of the community. They didn't just randomly give those out. No, they understood property.
So, okay, this is a confusing argument for you, because if they understood property, then why is it acceptable to take theirs?
Because they didn't own their land in the same way that they owned their stuff. They understood the idea of property. They didn't apply that to the land the way that you're saying they did.
Yeah, you basically saying that the Native Americans they were not very good at homesteading their land and resources.
Also, Freddie, I want to address quickly, the reason I said I'm fine with nations going to communism is, if that's the choice their people make, it's none of our business. Like when they elected that commie in Chile, it's none of our business. Who cares?
Again, I keep on telling you, the United States were barely involved in Chile. They were barely involved in that.
You may say it, but
I would disagree with you. Yeah, I would say we had more of an influence than what we would like to admit. I would also say we had more of an influence in a lot of political coups and upheavals. Saudi Arabia comes to mind, Syria, Egypt. We had a hand in nearly all. We had a hand in Saddam Hussein becoming in power in the first place.
And then we overthrew him. And I bet if they did find those weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, they probably had the United States name slapped all over.
Yeah. We were one of the CIA is responsible for creating Osama bin Laden and what became Al Qaeda. So the very name Al Qaeda comes from the CIA because it means the data. Do you think that they would name a Muslim terrorist group the data? No, it was because we trained them to infiltrate. We were actually using that organization to collect information about Russian military activity in that area. That's why they were codenamed the Data, because we're collecting information about our enemy during the Cold War.
Yeah, and that meme pops to mind when you fund a terrorist group that you funded to get rid of a terrorist group. You funded to get rid of a terrorist group. I mean, as much as I would disagree with a nation going to communism, if the people choose that, then it's out of our hands.
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
So I would agree with that.
Oh, okay.
But
in the very same book, Years of Evil, Henry Kissinger DACA memoirs during 1973 through 77. Like, if Chile was going to install a communist or Marxist state, if they successfully did that, thank God they didn't, it will only continue to pose geopolitical challenge to the West interests or to the United States interests. Do you really want a Soviet Union or a Cuban client state in South America, or they can inspire other revolutionaries? I just think tonight, while reading those passages from Dr. Kissinger's book, I just realizing the way he was explaining Allende. I just realized Allende was a very terrible statesman.
Well, yes. I mean, here's the thing. Even though it's debatable as to the presidency of Allende, the people elected him. They thought he was good enough to be president.
Oh, he wasn't that. Like, the thing is, he wasn't. He was very unpopular as president, Allende.
Well, so he was like Donald Trump.
He was very unpopular because the people were suffering under his regime.
And let me see the presidency of Chile, because I think he probably would have been up for re-election if he could get the nomination in 1974, if I'm getting it correctly. Let me see. President... Because I think they have...
But that's when they had the military coup, because they were like, if this guy gets elected again, we're all going to die. That's...
Let me see. President of Chile. Let me see. 4 years, not eligible for re-election immediately. But this is under the new constitution. I don't know if you could be re-elected immediately under the old one, but under the new one, like, if you serve 4 years, then you're out for at least 4 years, then you can come back, which is...
Plus, Allende wasn't elected directly by the people. He was elected by their Congress.
So you're saying he was not elected by the popular vote? Let me see.
Well,
presidents...
it was a very close election. Very close.
So the other thing about that is, once he was in power in the place that he was in, he could have named himself president for life in the same way that Fidel Castro did, because it's the same kind of setup where he got into power, created an entirely socialistic, communistic regime, and then named himself president for life, and that I would see the same. I see the same parallels, and it does not seem crazy to think that the Chile the president at the time wouldn't have done the same.
All right, let's see. All right, so I'm going to screen share.
Had the military coup not occurred, he probably would have named himself president for life.
Let's see. President of Chile. All right, so Salvador Allende was elected by the Socialist Party. Here's the election results. It says he committed suicide, but of course it's obviously going to be debatable as to whether or not he did it. All right, here it is. So, he won the popular vote by the skin of his teeth. He has 1 million. Yeah. The independent candidate had,
he was in coalition with the Christian Democrats here.
Yeah. Oh man, the Christian Democrats were way more corruptive than Salvador Allende. Like, they were way more corruptive before he.
Yeah, it was quite a close election, and in terms of popular vote and confirmation, he won. Like, compared to this, it was a landslide compared to in terms of confirmation votes.
Does Christian Democrat seem like an oxymoron to anybody else?
Is
that just me?
Personally, it sounds...
You're thinking from a U.S. standpoint.
Yeah.
It means that they were for social democracy while in keeping with Christian values.
Yeah, that sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Not because you're an anarcho-capitalist. Your version of Christianity enmeshes with that ideology. whereas the one of the Christian Democrats meshed Christianity with social democracy.
And I'm just some
Then
guy
that's-
with very esoteric opinions on politics.
Yeah, but that's not the like.
Yeah. I'm not a fascist, but women shouldn't have the right to vote. Jesus Christ. Like,
Wait.
I'm sorry, but that would fucking... Oh, it made me
That's
laugh.
not what he said. That's what Ham said that he said.
No, he said it on a private stream to the two of us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was an off-air hangout, and he said it, and then he kept saying everything was Jewish, and it was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Holy
he said
shit.
the Jews were
Yeah.
subversive influence.
Okay, so here's to clear up the confusion.
They are, but
Election
you're not
was
supposed
held.
to say that.
Yeah. Okay, so the election was held using the absolute majority system because no candidate had received 50% of the popular vote.
Yeah, that's what the absolute majority. That's what I was thinking of earlier. I was trying to think of that term.
That's what they do in some states if no one gets a majority of the popular vote. That's under the constitution of a few states. I don't know about mine, but I've heard of some. It's been that way, like in Michigan. But the same, like the House of Representatives will choose the president, and the Senate will choose the vice president if no one receives a majority of the electoral votes. There's the campaign, the CIA, and the KGB. They spend a lot of money to try and influence the outcome of the election.
Look, there's Russia colluding. Russia's colluding. They're influencing the outcome of other people's politics.
The president at the time was pissed about Allende's victory and the failure of the CIA's covert actions against them.
Too bad Allende didn't play ball with Western democracy.
And I do think
Okay.
Nixon's a war criminal for this type of thing, for supporting a coup like this. Henry Kissinger, which I keep wanting to call him Harry for some reason, I get him mixed up with Truman. I think you could argue he's a war criminal.
A lot of people argue that Henry Kissinger was a war criminal.
Well, he's still alive, so I'd say is. But anyway, semantics aside, people say, what is that fucker's name? Milton Friedman. No, he visited Chile almost 2 years after the coup, so I don't think he's a war criminal. He was never elected to public office anyway.
Oh, Milton Friedman was not involved in Chile. He pretty much denounced the military regime, but he
was an advisor. Well, not necessarily like, oh yeah, I'm an advisor to the president of Chile, but he did give some lectures and some economic advice. Other than that,
it was the Chicago boys that played the bigger role. He said that it was very impressive that a military junta, the military is notorious for being top-down, bureaucratic, very organized, and gave rise to a system to the free market, which is bottom-up, disorganized, and very decentralized.
It was basically economic warfare, and there's eyewitness accounts saying that he did commit suicide rather than he was murdered. But anyhow, I don't think there's really any justification for what happened here. Like, even if I don't know if you could argue ends justify the means,
I'm saying that it wouldn't be United States' best interest to have like a communist Soviet client state in South America.
We easily defeated Chile in this instance, and the United States is so strong it could probably defeat the rest of the world. We are that powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been various articles written in opinion pieces saying that if she left, that if the United States, I don't know, I think her computer acted up. I have no idea. But anyway, so the United States could be powerful enough to take on the rest of the world, and it could be at minimum a draw. That says a lot when it could be a draw. Let's see.
Yeah, so Chile is a bit of a... I don't know how to handle that, because while I do think they are better off now than they were under the previous, government system, I don't think that that justifies what happened, like the actual military coup.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
I just think that Salvador Allende just brought this military coup upon himself because he was a very moralizing political figure. I have no sympathy for him. He was brought.
I have sympathy for him. I have sympathy for the people whose lives were destroyed and all of that during the military coup because of the will of one man who was in charge.
Yeah.
Had he not been the one guy in charge, and had they instead elected somebody who was wanting to have more beneficial policies for the actual people there, then they wouldn't have needed to go through that military coup.
Yeah, and
So,
now
that's-
from 1990 to present, when Pinochet left, this is how it kind of goes. If you look right here, you can see that these presidents have succeeded one another. It's strange. I think it's stupid to have one
they
term.
just keep bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, so she was elected for the first time. He succeeds her. She succeeds him, and now he succeeded her a second time.
Oh.
Which is so fucking dumb. Like, there's only been one time in American history we've ever had a president who served non-consecutive terms, and never again have we had that happen. But
rather silly if a president tried to do that again.
Yeah, like he lost he won the popular vote, but he didn't win the electoral votes necessary. So it's like one of the 5 times it's ever happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, I used to be staunchly against the electoral college because I'm like, so you win the popular vote, but the person who doesn't win it, they can still win. But after talking it out, it's like, okay, that does make sense. To prevent tyranny of the majority. Yeah. All right, I see that. I can get you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dude, there's one truth that people advocates of liberal democracy won't admit. The middle class. The middle class are a bunch of, well, rather repugnant, ignorant, barely involved in their politics, in the political process, barely interested in their policies at home. Very ignorant, and that's pretty much the truth about the middle class in a nutshell. But,
yeah.
I don't think I'd agree with you, but
that none of them win like the majority of the popular vote. That's interesting. But yeah, so that article I just showed you all said that they had transitioned to a democracy after Pinochet left the presidency.
Pinochet did nothing wrong.
Oh God. I can sense Lapis getting the piano wire ready. I can sense it.
Don't worry.
Pinochet, if I had the potential to assassinate Pinochet while he was alive, I would have done so.
No.
Honestly, I can't blame Lapis here. Like, there's a lot of world leaders which, if they were still in power, even if it meant I would die, fuck it. There's some people who just deserve to be taken out of power.
Pinochet said Chile. No, and that's the right.
Yeah, well, because you got to understand from her perspective, he condemned it to brutal. Well, that's what you said. To force and exploitation.
Yes.
Where they were free and had everything that they needed under the previous regime before the military coup.
No, because the United States was intervening. Nixon said, "Make the economy scream." Bribed numerous people to strike. The CIA was involved immensely.
So it would have been utopia had the United States not been involved. Okay.
I'm just gonna try to stop their Kissinger authority on this because people often overstate.
The day Henry Kissinger dies, I think we can all take a sigh of relief. Like, I saw a picture of him with Hillary Clinton, and I just started fucking laughing. Like, I just started laughing so hard.
There's 2 types of people that hate Dr. Henry Kissinger.
I don't like where this is going, but
people who view him as a war criminal, and people view him as a very excellent Secretary of State and statesman.
And so there's nobody who just dislikes everything he does because he's a follower of Saul Alinsky's rule for radicals, and he's applying that doctrine to kind of subvert and obfuscate and destroy the United States from the inside. You can't just... No, he's either a war criminal or you love him, instead of he's a bad guy because he's following a bad ideology.
Hey, he's a real politicker, and rules are different when it comes to international relations.
It seems like no one follows international law anymore. Let's be real. Like, theoretically, all the nations are supposed to be equal. No one's a superior, but we all know that's fucking shit. That's not true.
It's the thing. Right. The thing is, since America is like the empire, the hegemon, we get the law, so no laws are broken.
Yeah, that's a
but-
problem.
Except when the United States does it.
No, that's a problem when anybody does it.
Oh
But,
man,
yeah.
I've been absorbing too much neoconservative junk. Christ.
Yeah, you seem to like. You and Secular Hawk, like, I got the impression when you were all like, Pinochet did nothing wrong. I'm like, you guys sound like neoconservatives. I
I'm
mean,
not neoconservatives. I hate neoconservatives with a burning passion.
Yeah, you hate them for being Jewish.
Yeah,
yeah, you put the fucking triple parentheses around them. I'm like, oh my god.
yeah.
Why?
They're not Jewish. They're Trotskyites.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
So the triple parentheses stands for Trotskyite, not that they're Jewish, therefore bad.
I've heard the accusation that neocons tend to be Trotskyites.
Well, at least the first generation.
They transformed it from the bourgeoisie and the proletariat to oppressive dictator, helpless people in need of saving abroad, and that was their justification.
Wait, they're in need of saving a woman?
You guys are gonna keep on making fun of me because I say the Jews a lot of times?
I'm gonna make fun of you.
Yeah, that's something worth making fun of, dude. That's
yes. It like, let's be real here. Let's be real. It's the next fucking meme that we create here. I mean, we made fun of Zach for saying he liked Blair White on his stream for a while. Then we made fun of.
Wait, did he say he liked Blair White? I think his exact words were, "I want to suck Blair's dick," if I'm not mistaken.
That was
that not?
Yes.
That's verbatim. At least that's how I remember it in my mind. It's like a safe. Nothing escapes that.
The thing about the Jews is because I actually read like an academic book by Kevin McDonald.
Oh, an academic book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
by David Duke. I thought you read a book by David Duke about the Jews.
No, it's by Kevin McDonald. He's an evolutionary psychologist.
I'm gonna Google this fucker. Let's see what he looks like.
Yeah, the
but that doesn't necessitate a critical view of this one guy was saying this, therefore it's true. Doesn't quite.
He just basically applied the evolutionary strategy, and he's
still alive.
Yeah,
that fucker's still alive. He's 74.
We got Twitter.
Oh god.
Yeah, but
the only McDonald I've spoken to is the British one. But anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But it doesn't follow that Jews are responsible for all the world's problems and that they're terrible people and they leech off of society. Doesn't quite make sense, man.
I just think that the Jews are basically a separatist movement.
Oh fuck.
Well, let them be separatists. That's what they're trying to be. They're like, hey, give us our own country and leave us the fuck alone. And nobody wants to.
Every Jewish person is a Zionist.
There's been a reason why they was expelled from every society, every country that they were in, and forced to move to Eastern Europe.
Just because everybody hates them, and so what you're saying is there's a reason based on they're terrible for their societies or they leech off of society. I think. This is again coming from my perspective, being Christian. Out of the four of us, I think I'm the only one that has this perspective. It seems like this is kind of going along the lines of biblical prophecy. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's the case, but you're like, hey, well, I don't see any other reason to hate the Jews because they seem to be pretty prosperous, they seem to be pretty industrious, and they seem to help more than hurt. And yet, for some reason, everybody hates them.
The problem is I don't like their philosophy, their religion,
but they don't all have the same beliefs. The Jewish
the Jew. It's a weird thing because there's Jew as in hereditary Jew and then Jew as in religious Jew. So are you talking about hereditary or are you talking about the religious?
Okay, here's a quote that sums up my views on the Jews. The Jew is immunized against all dangers.
Oh fuck.
What's schedule?
All right, you're just trolling now, man.
It's all run off like a water off a rainbow. We're calling him a Jew, and you be astonished how he recoils and how injured he is. And
are you
suddenly respect. I've been found.
No, I think he's just trolling us at the moment.
But yeah. I'm doing a response video to what the fuck is this bucket? Jared Taylor about white identity and why it matters. He's going on this goddamn diatribe. It's like, first of all, white identity is not under attack. Racial identity in general is stupid. It's like if you're so proud of like what'd you accomplish by being white? What'd you accomplish by being Hispanic? What'd you accomplish by being black? You didn't accomplish anything. And
that
to me,
that statement doesn't make any sense, Voltaire. It's
God.
because that they know. So if somebody calls you a child molester, you're gonna be like, okay, there's prove it, right? And so if somebody calls a Jew a scoundrel and all these other things, they're gonna be like, okay, prove it, because it's not true. You're just making false accusations. But then if you say that they are a Jew and inherently that's a bad thing, well, they're like, well, I am a Jew, but that's not inherently a bad thing. Of course, they're gonna find that is something that they're gonna take contempt with, right? They're gonna have some reason to object to.
I just quoted that from Joseph Goebbels that Nazi.
I'm seeing the quote,
Yeah.
and it.
I find it hilarious
Yeah.
that you're a black person quoting someone who considered you their racial inferior, advocating against the rights of someone else.
Yeah,
who
it was
would
as a
discriminate
joke
you.
and pretty tongue in cheek, but it seems like you have a beef to pick with the Jews overall.
Mhm.
Freddie
I don't
here's a blackist,
understand
a
that.
black fascist. That's
Hey,
what
hey, hey,
Blashist?
I just
A
hate
black-
they contributed to every field that they're in.
Oh God.
You,
Uh,
you
not
hate what they
example,
contributed? Because so you hate Einstein? You
No, the
Yeah.
thing is, like, for example, Sigmund Freud, like, most of his
Yeah.
ideas were nonsense, and it's still highly debated in
What?
psychology.
So because a Jew had a bad idea,
okay,
all
man.
Jews
I
are
gotta.
wrong.
There's another point I gotta disagree with you on. As for Freud being nonsense, no, that's not the case.
Come on, everything with Freud was about sex, though. That's not exactly
Because
true.
that is a primary driver of human activity. It's pretty obvious that
But I still said
no,
his ideas are still highly debated today.
it doesn't matter if they're highly debated. They, for the majority, they are actually practical. They're in use by psychiatrists right now. And as far as I know, they may be debated, but nobody's come up with better theories or better ideas to replace them. So that's why they're
Also,
still currently in
I
use.
don't like their ethical system at all. Well, at least
They don't have a single ethical system. There's a bunch of
They're
ethical
a distinct
systems.
ethnicity with all sorts of different opinions. It would be as
Yeah.
ridiculous as saying, I don't like the black ethical system, or I don't
Yeah.
like the white ethical system.
There has been so blacks have had Malcolm X. And not every black has the same ethical opinion as Malcolm X, because Malcolm X said Malcolm X was all for using violence to get his agenda. He's like, hey, we'll by any means necessary would have been a group or a statement that Malcolm X would have been for. Whereas Martin Luther King Jr. directly advocated against any and all forms of violence in his I Have a Dream speech. That's how he closes it. The last few minutes of that, he is talking about how we can't give in to any form of violence because that undercuts the entire movement. So how can you? So you'd be like, oh well, I hate the ethics of black people. What? Ayn Rand had a different ethical values than Murray Rothbard. Both of them highly disagreed. Both of them are Jewish. Both of them hugely contested each other. Karl Marx is another Jew. He's got a completely different set of values, completely different set of ethics. It's just silly to say, oh, all Jews have a terrible ethic. I'm like, and Einstein. So all three of those, to the best of my knowledge, are all atheists. And Einstein actually advocated for God, and I don't know exactly to the extent of which he was a religious believer or anything like that, but Einstein definitely said statements to the effect that there definitely is a God, and which is like, oh, well then he might have an ethical value or ethical system that's completely different from the other three that I previously mentioned. All four of these people are Jewish. Ben Shapiro is Jewish. He's not anything like the other people I just mentioned. It's ludicrous.
No, the thing is that they're very.
Okay, the thing is that all Jews are the same. Gotcha. Okay.
No. The thing is they're very ethnocentric.
But then again,
There's
here we
nothing
go
wrong
again.
with that.
All the Jews are the same. They all have the same values.
Well, if they're ethnocentric, there's nothing wrong with that because Japanese people are ethnocentric.
Like the thing is, like at least in America,
Chinese people are generally ethnocentric.
Korea.
Yeah, Indians are very ethnocentric.
So let's just again. The thing is, like the thing is, like the reason why I'm so like often joke about the Jews and like don't really like what they did. I don't like their philosophy, their religion that much.
They don't. Oh my goodness! This is the ridiculous idea that all Jews think the exact same way.
No, I'm not saying that.
That's
I'm not saying that.
exactly what you're saying right now.
No, I'm just saying like very specific set of people.
So,
Well,
but you're not referring
that
to
specific
Jews.
set of people instead of the Jews.
Like,
You're making your categories too broad. That's what we're saying right now. You're making it too broad by saying the Jews, when you mean maybe a specific set of the Jews or a specific belief system that this Jewish group tends to. Oh yeah, Natalie Portman is Jewish.
Yeah, Adam Sandler, Mila Kunis, Scarlett Johansson, Barbara Streisand.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, wait. They are all the same person. Stop giving him a different name. All Jews are all one person.
they're not like a okay.
Same views, same beliefs, everything.
There's a few other names. Woody Allen, Sarah Silverman, Jennifer Connelly, Daniel Radcliffe, Kate Hudson,
Connelly?
Seth Rogen.
Okay, Rogan I knew. Yeah. Wait, Jennifer
Shia
Connelly?
LaBeouf.
Really?
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf. Okay, yeah, that's.
Sarah Jessica Parker, like
Yeah,
long list of names. Ivanka Trump.
Wait a minute. Ivanka Trump is Jewish.
I googled Jewish people and it shows a ton of names and it says.
Well, she married.
Okay, right. She converted to Judaism. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on. This is a little too much.
Jack Black.
Hey, but all these people have the same ethical view and the same political view.
And they're all very ethnocentric.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
on Rothbard, like I said.
Okay, then you have a problem with Rothbard.
Don't criticize his Jewishness. Go after what you actually disagree
Sean
with.
Penn, William Shatner.
Yeah.
Did you know Sean Penn is? This is Sean Penn. This is Sean Penn the second. This is Sean Penn the 74th. Like they're all Sean Penn by your logic.
Oh man.
No, like on Rothbard, Rothbard.
Okay,
really
then
like
criticize Rothbard.
I really like Rothbard because, well, for one, he was a base Jew. He even defended Palestine one time.
What does being a base Jew have to do with anything?
What the fuck is a base Jew? I've never
I
heard
don't
of that.
know.
No, like, oh man, if you've been around alt-right Twitter or spoken to the people,
No, I don't give any credence to the alt-right because
the alt-right in general is a hate group. Hate movement.
They get the fundamentals incorrect, and then when you correct them on that, they refuse. They just like, oh no, that's. So
Freddie, you say you like to understand fascism and you like to talk to the far right. I think you spent a little too much time chatting with the far right. Like I've spent a lot of.
Only talked to like a few like select people.
I've chatted with some far leftists.
I think that they've had more of an impact on you than you think, and this is not. Maybe I'm incorrect on this, and again, this is what I say about everything I've said on my podcast or everything I say in my life. More than likely, I'm wrong about everything I say. But this is from my observation. You tend to change your mind based on what you're viewing or experiencing at the time. Because this seems to be what, at least from what I've understood or from our interactions, is whatever you think or whatever you're saying that you believe. I mean, you seem to be a really smart guy, but you're quoting like verbatim nearly what you're reading at the time, even if it contradicts what you were just reading like a couple of days ago. And I'm like, wait, how do you change your viewpoint that rapidly? And it seems to be just, what I'm currently viewing, or what I'm currently experiencing, or what I'm currently reading, or whatever it is, that's the truth. And then as soon as you start reading some other perspective, well, that becomes the new truth. And I'm like, that seems a very dangerous way to go through life.
Yeah, you remind me of a dude who changes his mind a lot, except you're like way smarter than him, so take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't change my mind on a lot of things, though.
But it seems like your views right now about Jews, like what you're stating, come exclusively from a book that you had just read, and maybe it's because you haven't read any other book to contradict that or any other perspective so that becomes your new baseline that you adhere to, even though that baseline should kind of contradict some of the other points that you hold.
Yeah, so like if me and Lapis here were to write like literally a one paragraph, not even book, not even pamphlet, just one paragraph saying the Jews are awesome, just like literally for 5 sentences, just repeat that.
Yeah, just make 100 pages where it just says Jews are awesome, Jews are awesome, Jews are awesome. Hey, Jews are hot, and then Jews are awesome. And then if Voltaire reads that for a couple of days, his opinion may change.
Or let's do what people do on Twitter. You just type that. I'm repeating a sentence. I'm repeating a sentence. I'm repeating a sentence.
Yeah.
Type of view. Oh, that'd be. Do you change your mind that easily, dude?
So hopefully you take this as constructive criticism.
Despite
and what you should do is when you're taking in a new piece of information, go in with the assumption that whatever that new piece of information is wrong. It's incorrect. Try to poke holes into it. And if you cannot successfully destroy the argument being made, well then, okay, it stood the test. Okay, now you can add that to your toolbox and be like, okay, this is more than likely true, given what I've scrutinized it through.
Yeah. Hey, Aspie, how's it going?
Not much. I'm just.
We were just talking about me.
Because when you're talking about that book that you've read, it seems like you didn't apply any kind of scrutiny to it, and you just accepted it as fact. I'm like, wait, no, there's all kinds. Because when you're relaying it back to me, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. What about this? It's like I'm trying to poke holes into it as it's presented.
Yeah, but yeah, Aspie.
Okay.
Freddie here was going on tangents about the Jews, and Lapis called him a fascist, and then I said he's a black fascist, therefore a blashist.
I'm not black. I'm not a fascist by any means.
Oh, come now. I mean, I don't throw.
Well, you go on tirades about the Jews. You go on tirades about the Jews.
Well, that by definition is not fascist.
You support fascists like Pinochet.
Yeah.
I would disagree that Pinochet is a fascist. I don't think that's the case.
Chucking commies out of helicopters, I would consider a very authoritarian, dictator type fascist.
Well, yeah.
Still funny meme.
Yeah, it's funny meme.
But the commies can bring up hanging capitalists with piano wires, and Lapis, you will never be able to get that piano wire around me.
Isn't that what they did to Mussolini after they killed him?
No, hung him upside down.
Okay, so
his toes.
So we've gotten derailed and a little bit off into the weeds. Okay, let's get Lapis, because you wanted to talk to me about socialism, and we sort of got into this 2 weeks ago when we started this conversation. But where am I wrong considering socialism?
Pardon?
So where am I wrong? Because I'd given a bit of a definition.
Of socialism was the state redistributes the excess to the working class.
Yes.
By taking ownership of the means of production.
Yes.
Socialism is working class ownership of the means of production. The workers getting to own what they make, as opposed to having their labor exploited by the capitalist.
Okay, because I was under the impression that was communism, and that's socialism is a stepping stone to get to that point. And then it would be, once it got to that point, then it would be communism, not socialism.
Aren't you assuming that the worker wants what he makes? Maybe he's making it
hang on a second.
to make money.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. So I'm just trying to get the ground level, make sure we're on the same page here.
Okay.
Okay.
Communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society.
Yes. So
socialism is the first step on the path to communism.
Okay. So how do you transition from what Russia had? So Russia had an emperor, right? This is at least
a czar, yes.
Yeah, so a czar. That's basically the same. So Russia had a czar. They had I don't know if their economy was capitalist, but it was very capitalist in nature. It might have been closer to mercantilism. I'm not exactly sure on this. But then when the idea of Marx spread, and that's when they had the revolution, where the was it the Weimar Republic? No. Who was the yeah, they had the Bolsheviks. Yeah, the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah.
And they instituted policies based on Marx's philosophy.
More based on Marxist-Leninism. Leninism
Okay.
was the drive towards the state acting primarily as the owner of the means production.
So
And Lenin even moved towards a variant of capitalism after he had sorted out the civil war with the whites. He moved towards a variant of capitalism in order to regenerate Russia's economy. Then,
the economy.
So even Lenin realized that capitalism was better at creating a growing economy than what their planned society was, where the state controlled things. Now, how would you go straight from what was before? So if it had gone the way that you are proposing, how would it have gone from the Tsar's system of capitalism to socialism? So imagine if Lenin wasn't the person in charge, but you were. How would you have done it differently?
If I had been in charge, I would have. But like, it is something of an arrogant question because I believe in democracy and I believe in, working with groups. So it wouldn't be just me in charge. But anyway, that's besides the point. What I would do is that instead of what Lenin initially did, which was sending the military to take from the peasants to feed his army, what I would have done is say to the peasants, no, you don't have a landlord anymore. Work together and form cooperatives with each other. Work together, pool your resources, and that way, and through democracy, manage your common lands, as opposed to having this rich boyar from St. Petersburg tell you what to do.
Okay. And so what about the landlords and the business owners and all the people who were previously employers? They're just kind of SOL? They're like, fuck you, sucks to be you.
Well,
because those are the petty bourgeoisie, right?
How terrible working conditions were in Russia. Like, it was not fun to be a worker.
It's not fun to be a worker in any society.
Can I just point something out real fast? Because
Sure.
I think Marx mostly focused on the sort of industrial factory worker, where the conditions were truly terrible, and there were some good critiques that he had, but that type of system is pretty much gone, except at least in America. I mean, if you look at the Leninist system, or the Marxist system, it's supposed to apply to the sort of factory worker rather than the common guy working in a small business. If you look, there's just like this big giant fallacy that socialists say or communists say that all the wealth will go to like the top few in society. That really never happened. If you look at, there's many different business owners. There's many different business owners.
Okay.
There's many different everything.
Aspie, you do realize that income inequality has been growing in America since like the late 70s. And the wealth of the bottom 50% of society has been declining. And that, an ever smaller coterie of companies.
So when you all right, hang on a second.
I do want to have this conversation as well, Timothy. I just had to respond to the interjection.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
So when you say the wealth, are you talking about the percentage of that wealth, or are you talking about the total wealth?
Sorry. Are you referring to like?
So when you said the bottom 50%, their wealth is decreasing, are you talking about the percentage of their wealth, or are you talking about their overall wealth?
The percentage of their wealth, so their share in ownership of the economy.
And so,
has been declining.
And that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Because it's trending towards oligarchy. If you have one group that has massive power over everyone else in society, and you have the majority of society dispossessed of economic power and a say in their own lives.
Okay. So for you, the percentage matters. So even if the percentage is getting lower, but that means the overall wealth of that group is growing up in general. That seems to be a pretty common trend.
If you look at the numbers, sorry, I'm trying to get all this facts for you to look at.
What's your time frame?
Decline as well as a general whole, especially among the white working class. they've suffered a precipitous decline, especially with the last economic recession.
Okay, what time frame are you going off of by that? Are you saying in the last 10 years, last 50 years, last 200 years?
Well, pretty much since the late 70s, so I guess about 50 years, we've been seeing a weakening of the working class, a weakening of unions, a weakening of their share in the economy and their ability to participate.
Okay. So that issue is solved with with socialism. Now compare that. Okay, so let before we get into socialism, capitalism compared to any other system that came before it, as far as the wealth inequality, would you say that it's better?
Capitalism, as for the systems that came before, like feudalism, slavery, I'd say capitalism is better. I think even Marx admitted that capitalism was better than feudalism and slavery.
Okay. And so, so I just wanted to establish that.
Marx said that I thought Marx said that it was more like a process, like a dialectical process, like an evolution.
I think according
dialectical materialism, I think is what you're referring to, about how society history is characterized by class struggle between a group with power and those without, and how new groups come to take power and then use that power to oppress.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Systematically.
Okay. So socialism is supposed to be superior to capitalism.
Yes.
Okay. But the USSR was not socialism because the state took ownership of the means of production when it was supposed to be the workers who had the means of production for Marx's socialism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How is the state not the workers? That's why I guess where my question is, because isn't the state, or at least the USSR's version of the state, wasn't that responsible to the people?
No, not at all. It was a party dictatorship of a coterie of radical intellectuals, people who were selected based on their contributions to revolutionary activity in pre-Tsarist Russia. And then later under Stalin, it was whoever had high office was basically whoever could, suck up as much as possible to Stalin and avoid getting purged. The Soviet Union was highly undemocratic.
Okay, but socialism would be highly democratic.
Yes.
Okay.
But democracy is overrated, though.
Well, that's your opinion because you're a fascist.
Stop calling me a fascist. You're gonna call me anything. Please call me a reactionary.
No, I don't give you the credit of reactionary.
All right. So we're trying to get to
Stop calling.
Okay.
Please.
So this is the point of this exercise, is to try to see things from the other perspective, right? So right now, Voltaire, what you're doing is you're outright dismissing the point that she's making, which is not the case. So the question that what you should be doing right now is questioning to make sure that you understand exactly what their position is. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know if I'm doing a good job, but okay.
I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Okay. Okay, so if that's the case, have there been any examples of socialism that is true socialism, or have all the regimes that claim to be socialism, have they all been the Leninist version, like the, I guess, bastardization of socialism?
I'd say that there are two variants of socialism, as I see it, alive and well of the world right now. The Zapistas of southern Mexico, and the Democratic Confederalists of Rojava.
Okay, and those are both of those true socialists, or both of those kind of the Leninist version of it?
I would say that they advocate the version of socialism that I advocate, which is, direct democracy, respect for one another, cooperatives owning the, cooperatives making up the economy rather than private ownership.
So Venezuela is not an example of socialism.
Venezuela.
Hugo
That's
Chavez.
actually that's an interesting one because there are socialist elements within Venezuela. There are worker cooperatives within Venezuela, and I would consider those to be small forms of socialism.
Hugo Chavez.
But the state, owning the oil in Venezuela and the state taking ownership and nationalizing various enterprises, I would not consider that to be necessarily socialism, and I would consider the slide towards dictatorship happening in Venezuela to be counter to socialist principles of democracy.
Yeah. So
would you be fine with worker co-ops and like under a capitalist mode of production?
You're talking about mutualism, I think.
I've never heard that term, mutualism, but I do know under anarcho-capitalist society you can have communist co-ops. There's nothing against that. Yeah. As long as the people within it are voluntarily entering that communist co-op. So okay, so let me just. So Venezuela, did they have a democratic form of government? Initially.
However, Venezuela, there were actions that Hugo Chavez took that for one thing, he kind of doxed all the people who signed a referendum for him to resign from government. He put that information available on national TV, which is not an explicitly fascist thing to do, but it is a kind of authoritarian gesture, I would say. Okay. And there was a gradual descent and growth of corruption within the Venezuelan government, and gradually respecting less and less democratic norms until we get to Maduro, and I'd say that he's a dictator by now, because the elections are completely illegitimate, the economy is collapsing, in part because of U.S. sanctions, in part because of corruption within the Venezuelan government.
Wait, didn't they place tariffs on a bunch of exports or whatever, or imports? I forget what was it, but didn't they place tariffs though? Maduro?
That's possible.
It seems like Venezuela, you're saying that part of the reason was what the U.S. was doing by imposing economic sanctions. Now, the U.S. is capitalist. Let's take a smaller country like Singapore. Singapore is capitalist. Now, if the U.S. imposed sanctions on them, Singapore would not collapse, to the best of my knowledge.
But if, say, Malaysia imposed sanctions on them, that would be a significant negative, because Malaysia pretty much surrounds them. As I said, sanctions were a factor, not the only factor. Corruption was also a factor. Bad spending, like excessive spending, another factor.
Yeah, okay. So my question is, if socialism is supposed to be superior to capitalism, why do sanctions play a part in the collapse of a socialist society when capitalism, to the best of my knowledge, is immune to sanctions because it is independent internally? That's the idea behind capitalism.
Like, you look at the dictatorship in Haiti in the mid-1990s. That was a capitalist country. The they pretty much ruined their
dictatorship capitalist. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'll have to look into that, because how can you have a capitalist dictatorship?
Well, capitalism
that sounds like a very
by private ownership of the economy,
which you can't have if there's a dictator. If there's a dictator, what private ownership is there?
That was just owned by the cronies of the dictator and the wealthy that live under the regime.
They tend to have like ridiculously high tax rates.
Let's get
okay. And he had quite low taxes.
Okay, so let's no. Okay, there's a dictator, but you own your own stuff under a dictator. How then is that dictator still a dictator?
Because he does not permit elections. He does not permit freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. He cracks down on these things to enforce his own control and the control of his associates.
But he lets people own stuff and use it however they choose, and doesn't make them follow his rules in regard to that. How can he keep his power if he's distributing it out to other people? That seems contradictory to a dictatorship.
How did the king keep power when he distributed it to his feudal lords?
Well, because he didn't have capitalism. As soon as capitalism entered the situation, the lords, the individual, like as soon as they started using capitalism instead of mercantilism or feudalism, then they actually saw no need for their benevolent dictator or the king, which led to the revolution.
Well, it depends on your country. Like Russia stayed a dictatorship until 1917, and then pretty quickly turned into one again because of the Lemnis.
Yeah. So going back to England, as soon as capitalism became the primary, or I guess it was mercantilism kind of mixed with capitalism as it was changing from one to the other, that's when we actually had the revolution, which led to the Magna Carta being signed.
Well, the Magna Carta
seemed they seem to kind of go hand in hand.
The Magna Carta was signed during feudalism in an attempt to reinforce to reinforce the positions of the lords within England. Like the Magna Carta.
Wait,
signed.
That doesn't make sense timeline-wise, right? 1215? Was it really?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so that would have been feudalism then. Okay.
Feudalism.
Yeah, so mercantilism came well after that then.
Yeah, in the 17th, 18th centuries.
Yeah.
You know who wrote a very
devastating
mercantilism?
Sorry, what?
You know who wrote a very devastating critique of mercantilism?
Adam Smith?
Yep, that guy.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know why I had it in my head that the Magna Carta was around 1500, but I guess I was way off by about 300-ish years.
It's not your fault because there was another, there was the when they got rid of what's-a-face, King Charles I. That was in the 1600s, and that's a pretty close time frame.
Okay.
And then there was the Glorious Revolution in the late 1600s, and that even more moved England towards constitutional monarchy.
Okay.
It was a gradual process of removing the powers of the monarch in England until we have
that's
pretty much nothing.
Okay. From my understanding is the more power that the people underneath a tyrant or a dictator or a monarch get, the more power and more freedom they get, the less likely they are to follow the instructions of that dictator or that, whoever's in charge. Because eventually, and they overthrow that person. So it doesn't make sense to me why a dictator in Haiti would give out enough power to the people around him where they could stop listening to him. Because a dictator wants to centralize power, not distribute it.
But the thing with capitalism is that, the capitalists are the ones bankrolling his dictatorship. The dictator in Haiti replaced a socialist Christian who had been elected to power. And this was, seen as a rather negative development by a lot of the wealthy white elite in Haiti. And so they sponsored this dictator to protect their property.
Okay. And is he protecting their property?
Well, I mean, he only lasted for about 2 years because of the sanctions.
Wait. So the dictator only lasted about 2 years because of the sanctions?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was Haiti dictator using capitalism, but didn't have a self-sustaining economy.
Well, Haiti is not a very good country. It's, it's quite it's kind of been turned into a client state. At first it was, a colony of the French. And then under independence, it gradually shifted towards a kind of a colony of the United States. Not in practice, but not in theory.
Yeah.
But it kind of fell into the United States economic orbit.
Okay. So that doesn't make any sense to me as to how it could be capitalistic and not be self-sustaining, because those two are supposed to be one and the same. It's like, how can you sell something to someone else if you don't have enough for yourself? It's like,
because it's dependent on selling a certain export, like sugar, to a certain market, aka the Americans. When the Americans put sanctions on Haiti under the dictatorship,
yes,
they no longer had access to that export, so they could no longer use gold, then the money that they had accrued from selling the sugar, to buy the foodstuffs they needed and to supply themselves with energy, which is why they started chopping down all the trees in Haiti to burn and to to try to keep warm. And that's why Haiti is environmentally in such a poor state and constantly prone to landslides, is because of the actions of that dictatorship.
Okay. So they were practicing capitalism in that they specialized in one particular industry, and in that one particular industry, they were no longer allowed to export it. They had nothing else to fall back on.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were... Alright. Now, because it's a small island country, so had they stuck with socialism, you think that they would have avoided all of that altogether?
Well, because they could have shifted the production away from the sugar profits that the capitalists wanted and towards local needs, like agriculture, like giving these people housing, and could have developed a certain self-sufficiency, which they couldn't do under capitalism because of the need to accrue profit by the people who own the land in Haiti.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So there have been examples of socialist societies creating stable societies, like stability, It
seemed like you want to eliminate rent sinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that
rent sinking is something that you kind of want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that it should be the workers owning the land, or I suppose in this case it would be the peasantry, rather than some sort of some rich boy from New York City who owns like 500 million, owns acres and acres and acres all around the world. No, it should be the people living in those countries who are making the decisions about what they grow on that land, because it affects them and it's rather crucial to their survival.
Okay. So, how did that person end up owning the land in the first place? The rich asshole who's only concerned about himself and doesn't care about the people who work on his land. How did he get the land? Was it given to him by the dictator?
Depends on the case, right? Some capitalists, genuinely rose from poverty to owning this, massive empire.
Whoa. But no, capitalism only exploits and it only uses force, so that can't possibly be the case.
If you're using, even if you come from a low economic situation, if you begin to, if you accrue this, if you begin to take ownership of other people, you're still exploiting them.
Wait, begin to take ownership of other people? Are you talking about, what time frame are we talking about here? Is this when slavery is still permissible, or is this post-slavery?
Well, a lot of the rich companies in the United States actually did make a lot of their money from slavery.
Okay.
Slavery, although under Marxism, is normally considered a separate economic system.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird how it interacted with capitalism in the United States.
Okay. So the example you were just saying, where some of these capitalists rose through the system honestly, they didn't do it honestly through capitalism, they did it honestly through slavery, and then when slavery was abolished, then they proceeded to use capitalism.
Depends on the capitalist, right? That's what I'm saying. A lot of them, there was the occasional ones that did actually, work hard to
Mark Zuckerberg
over the means of production.
So Mark Zuckerberg used slave labor.
Well,
right, because he's a relatively recent multi-billionaire. to the best of my knowledge, he didn't. He was in university, right? But his family wasn't one of those rich aristocracies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg, he would be somewhat of an exception.
Okay.
But you could look at someone like Jeff Bezos.
Okay. So before we go into Jeff Bezos, let's analyze Zuckerberg, and we'll go to Jeff Bezos after. So Zuckerberg, was he an example of someone using capitalism to without force or exploitation?
Well, the original idea didn't involve force and exploitation, but eventually, because of the need of Facebook to make money, he did begin to exploit people's privacy and turn that into a commodity. Part of capitalism is commodifying things that didn't used to be commodities.
Sorry, exploited their information. So what are you referring to there?
Selling their Facebook data to to companies, so they could target their advertising, and even to Cambridge Analytica, so they could analyze it politically. Certain groups could.
So he got his billions by selling people's information without those people agreeing to that, right? Against their will. Was it against the will of the Facebook users to have their information sold and transmitted, and then so they could get advertised to? I'm trying to figure out where the exploitation and force actually come into play here.
Well, privacy was something that never used to be a commodity. Your own information. Didn't necessarily used to be something that was a product before the advent of social media pioneers like Mark Zuckerberg. But
now that it is, that's a bad thing?
Here's what I'll do. I'll sucker people in with this useful service, and then, through the information I'm selling to these companies, that's where I'll make my billions. And meanwhile, that creates a system that makes it more and more easy for predatory organizations and governments to take advantage of people.
Take advantage of them by advertising to them.
Well, I suppose, yeah, by advertising them, but it's advertising, like, I guess, think of it like this.
I'm still not sure where force or exploitation come into this, because that people willingly participate in Facebook, and they sign agreements, or they at least click through the agreement saying, yeah, sure, this is fine, whatever, I don't care. And you're saying that right there is exploitation and force.
Well, it's certainly trickery.
I would give you fraud. I don't know if I would necessarily say that is exploitation or force.
The exploitation and force comes more from his, the treatment of his employees working for Facebook. Because instead of the employees being able to say, hey, maybe this is a bad direction for Facebook to be steering in, maybe we want it to go in a different direction. No, Mark Zuckerberg gets to make the decisions.
Okay,
so he's the one in charge.
Did he hire them to be partners, or did he hire them to be employees?
And that's the thing with capitalism, right? It doesn't necessarily matter, because it's still
this is a huge point that should matter a lot.
Okay.
If I hire you to clean out the trash in my business, does that mean that your say on how I run my business is equal to mine? If that is the case, then I'm not going to hire you to take out the trash in my business. Why would I give half of my company away for the sheer position of you cleaning out trash?
Well, that's the thing. I don't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to.
Yeah. Why would I ever hire anybody at that point? Why wouldn't I just run it all myself?
Well, because there's nothing wrong with working with other people.
Wait. Not if they get to tell me and dictate how the company that I started is run. If I'm Mark Zuckerberg, I start Facebook. It's all on my own dime. I get however many users he had when he was a one-man operation. I start making money off of this endeavor. I start hiring people, not because I want them to have an equal say in how the company is run, but to do a specific task in my company. I say, you're going to do this specific task. They say, okay, I'll do that specific task for this amount of money. I give them that amount of money, and you're saying that no, that's not a good enough deal. They should have gotten that amount of money, and they need an equal say in how the company is run. Why would a person in Zuckerberg's position hire anybody at that point?
Well, the idea really is that it would be groups, not individuals, starting these foundations.
So no company would ever be started by an individual. All companies would be started by groups of individuals.
Well, not necessarily. There's people who are antisocial and who don't necessarily want to run a worker cooperative.
But you still have the same problem.
Would start a business, but they wouldn't necessarily, sorry.
You still have the same problem. So say there's a group of 50 people that start a business. Why would they hire a 51 person and give them a say in how the company is run if all they need is somebody to take out the trash? They're like, hey, we need somebody to take out the trash.
That person's labor is still valuable.
It's valuable. That's why they're paying him to take the trash out. They're not.
I know, but is his pay equal to the task he's doing?
Why should it be equal to the task he's doing? If it was equal to the task he was doing, again, you wouldn't hire that person. You would just do it yourself.
Exactly. That's the exploitation in capitalism, is that people are hired to do tasks and then receive compensation, which is not equal to the labor and the...
because if it was the same amount, then I don't gain anything if it's the same amount.
That's the point. It's not about your individual gain. It's about the gain of everybody.
No, it's a net loss if I'm paying you exactly what I'm getting back in return. I don't gain anything or lose anything, so why do that? Why go through the effort of hiring someone to do a job? If it's a zero for me, it's a zero. I gain nothing, I lose nothing. Why would I put extra effort to gain or lose nothing?
Hey, Lapis, do you consider time preference in your argument?
Oh, you seem to be quite fascinated with time preference. You seem to view it as this really important thing. Would you like to talk more about time preference and how you think it might apply or not apply?
Yeah, I'm not sure why he's bringing that up exactly right now, but...
it's that's one more of the Austrian criticisms of socialism, or at least the Marxist theory of exploitation of time preference, because it's sort of like impossible to receive your full labor due to the fact you prefer consumer goods now than later. The worker has a much lower time preference than the entrepreneur or capitalist.
I'm not sure that's always the case, especially if the capitalist inherits their wealth. But even in the case of, say, a original entrepreneur, I'm thinking that we should maybe reconsider an economy centered around individualist entrepreneurs creating things so they can make a wealth off of other people. I think it should be groups of people who hey, this is an interesting idea. Let's work together as a group. And we'll work to our own profit, as opposed to, I have a good idea. I want to profit off of other people. Everyone else should work for my benefit.
What I'm trying to say is it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like they have much of a choice, because it seemed like a rather impossibility just to receive the full value of their labor, whether that might be due to the fact that they have limited time and resources.
So. Not quite sure what Voltaire is getting at right now, but something you said triggered something in my head. What's stopping them from doing that right now? What's stopping groups of people from getting together to create something that has no positive benefit or no profit for themselves, but is a profit for society? What's stopping that right now?
They already are doing things like that.
Okay, so then why do we need socialism? Because apparently they already are doing things like that under capitalism.
Socialism within capitalism. It's micro-socialism.
Okay,
what I want is macro-socialism, to extend the positive effects that I see in socialist run.
Why the need?
The economy.
Why the need for that? Why not just let it happen organically? Why the need to force capitalism to go away against the will of the people who want to participate in capitalism? Why not just let it happen?
There is a will of the people, and I don't think that they necessarily organically have that opinion.
Okay.
I think it's false consciousness.
No.
If the majority of people
I am an
slave,
I am an entrepreneur at the moment.
Yes.
I am an entrepreneur. I am a firm believer in capitalism. That is the best economic system. Yes. So why would you force me under socialism to not pursue capitalism?
why would I force you not to pursue capitalism?
Yeah.
Are you hiring
What?
anyone?
No. Well, I'm not hiring anyone
So
specifically
right now
because
you are not, and you are not a capitalist. You are a
what?
You would be what Marx would call a petty bourgeois.
I'm
You know,
not a
small shop owner.
capitalist. Yeah, I'm
You're
not
not
a
a capitalist.
capitalist because I don't hire anybody because it's cheaper for me to not hire somebody right now.
Yeah, that's small business. You know, that's, and even like hiring a few people. That's
But
still
no,
a small business.
wait. But under socialism, small businesses where a single person owning everything, that's. But all right, I'm trying to figure out. Under socialism, I wouldn't be able to hire anybody, right?
You could hire them if you were willing to work with them. If you were willing to accept.
So they would get I would have to make them a partner in my company. I couldn't just hire an employee. I'd have to hire a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I will never hire anybody in my system.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can just leave that up to other.
Okay. So under socialism, I can do that. Under socialism, I can run my entire business. Am I allowed? So I'm selling a service.
Yes.
Am I allowed to make money off of that?
Yes.
Under socialism?
Yes. Socialism has many different varieties. The one that I'm interpreting right now would be a market socialism.
Okay.
And yeah, sure.
So my business right now, so this is the business I'm running or setting up at the moment. It's called Fund Fair. It's a website, and people are going to go there, and they are going to pay for various services. Well, the main program is free, but they're going to pay for the privilege of sending money from one place to another or for donating to specific causes. So there's a small portion that I take out of that because of that. That is perfectly allowed under your version of socialism, provided I don't have any employees.
Well, yeah, it's provided you don't exploit other people.
Well, how am I not exploiting my customers, right?
You're not exploiting them because you're selling them something that they want. Like, that's not actually.
So isn't that what an employer does?
No.
Selling somebody something that they want?
You mean as in a job?
Yes.
As the commodity?
Yeah.
Well, there's not really a choice here in terms of capitalism. Most people have to sell their labor or they starve, and so they look for the.
Hang on a sec. So before you go on with that, they have to sell their labor or they starve. You don't have to work under socialism in order to avoid starving.
I believe in welfare. I believe that everyone should have. I believe in a universal basic income. So
if I don't have to work at all, and then I can eat and not starve to death.
Yes.
So why should I work?
Because then you'd make more money and be able to have a better lifestyle, or you'd be able to participate in something that you enjoy. Like, why does an artist paint? They don't necessarily paint just because they want to make money. They paint because it's an expression of their human spirit.
No. So there are a lot of people that won't work if they don't have to. So you're under the assumption that enough people will work for what they want. Art does not produce food, right?
This
is an argument I hear socialists make a lot, right? If you don't want to work, you don't have to, but you will want to work in art and science and music, and how does that produce food for your system? If everybody doesn't want to work and they all want to pursue art, so they all want to make music, they want to make movies, they want to make entertainment, how do you get any food on the table? Somebody has to farm, right?
Do you think have machines? And besides, there are people who do want to farm already in the system. There are plenty of people who are interested in agriculture.
Want to farm.
Yeah.
Yes, they wake up just excited to farm so that way they can feed everybody else.
Because they enjoy being with the land, because they enjoy interacting with the animals, because they love the rural environment.
Okay, there will be enough.
It's not just because. And so they can maybe improve their lifestyle a bit.
How they will not face the same alienation as Marx described under this socialist system.
will they not face the same alienation from their labor? Because they won't be being exploited by capitalists. They will be able to make their own decisions about their own labor, and under a system of democracy.
But no, they can't make their own decision, because if they don't produce enough food, people starve. They can't make less than a certain amount of food for the nation.
Oh, well...
They have a quota of how much food they have to produce. Right?
I think I see what you're getting at. That if, under your hypothetical, there needs to be a certain amount of people that are producing food, that are producing certain commodities.
Yes.
In order for society to be sustained. What about automation?
What about automation?
Automation is currently really expensive.
Let her finish that thought. So what about automation?
Significantly reduce the amount of people needed to produce food, and significantly.
Agreed, but how do you make the jump from people right now can do whatever they want and they don't have to worry about food to everything's automated? How do you get from those two? Those seem very disjointed to me, because it seems to me that you would have to have the automation first, and then you could have a society where you don't have to work if you don't want to. But you seem to be putting the cart before the horse by saying you don't have to work if you don't want to, oh, by the way, yeah, we're going to have automation.
Well, technically, in America right now, people can choose not to work. I mean, it's not a very good lifestyle, and they live in quite a lot of poverty.
But people choose that.
They still can choose not to work.
And people do that.
Yes.
So you're assuming that they wouldn't do that under socialism.
No, I'm assuming that there probably always are going to be people who are idle.
So right now, capitalism can't support those people.
Well,
right? It's called unfunded liabilities.
You think that the social welfare system is unsustainable as it exists?
Yeah, as it currently exists. Even if we don't add any new bills, as it is right now, we cannot afford it. We are going bankrupt.
Well, that's because of excessive military spending and all sorts of...
even if you get rid of everything else, just the unfunded liability is enough to bankrupt the United States.
Do you have the numbers to back that up?
I need to... Okay, so...
Just this. Lack of counting time preference.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure where you were going with that, because you're...
No, it's sort of like more of a classical criticism of the Marxist exploitation theory.
Okay.
By the Austrian economists of the 19th century.
I will look at the Austrian economics argument.
Okay.
I didn't consider it
so...
in this chat as you expressed it to be a particularly compelling case against socialism.
Wait, what?
I said I didn't think that your argument was a good case against socialism.
I'm just saying. I was arguing more specifically against the exploitation theory.
Yeah, I didn't think that was a good argument.
I think it's a good argument because time preference is really
okay.
It's really subjective to the individual. Like to prefer more over less.
Okay.
I just don't necessarily think that always the capitalist does more than the worker and invests more time. Maybe the original entrepreneur.
It doesn't matter what
the inheritor.
Not. It really doesn't matter on that.
As I said, I don't find your argument very convincing.
Okay.
I'm not trying. The thing is,
so here's some figures. So I'm going to link this. So this is from the Washington Post, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that their numbers are correct. Social Security, Medicare, and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Those are $87 trillion worth of unfunded liability. Our total net worth of the country is $94 trillion. That means...
Could you link the article?
Yeah.
I'd like to read it.
So let me... where did my Hangout go?
Time preference. Okay.
So... I can get rid of this congressional pensions, but So
Thing is,
between
like,
those
it
three,
doesn't-
that's 87 trillion, and if our country's net worth is 94 trillion, that means there's 7 trillion, which I think is covered by other social programs, if I'm not mistaken, because Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are not the only welfare programs.
She left.
Oh. Alright, well, I'm just... So, for if anybody's actually watching this, looking at this article, the intragovernmental debt by itself is 5 trillion. And the combined debt held to the public is 12 trillion. Now, that's not 12 trillion and 5 trillion annually. That's just the total amount of national debt. So, I'm trying to see where... Because, let's see, what's the military budget? I know that's not...
How's old that Art Washington Post is?
Oh, this is 2013 or something like that. So this is I'm just going off of their numbers for this because they seem to be all consistent.
Sorry, the stream kind of cut out for there. I'm looking at the Washington Post article, and they seem to be arguing against the idea.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at their numbers. I'm not agreeing with their conclusion. I'm going with the numbers that they're talking about.
No, of course.
So
Right, on time preference.
Yeah, as I said, we'll have to do another stream about that, Freddie. I'll read your source and I'll make my counter arguments, but as you presented the argument, I didn't find it convincing.
The thing is that, like, time preference is really a subjective thing. It's very subjective. It's
yeah.
Just why you don't find it exactly convincing. Just because I consider time preference to be a very, very important economic concept.
I've noticed that in your thought. I'm glad that you at least that I hope this concept occupies your thinking a bit more than the obsession with the Jews.
Okay. I'm not really obsessed with the Jews, but maybe in a proper show I could express it more articulately.
Then they're subversive influence because they all think alike.
Most of them are cosmopolitan universalists and rationalists.
We added up the assets the U.S. government. The government had to, but there's more.
There we go.
That the government has promised to retirees, but which either owes or has more than it was just 5.
Okay.
Click here to see Learn Liberty.
So
let's just say HAPA has a really big influence on me.
So I'm pulling up a little bit more. So this is $20 trillion in national debt.
Also, that source that I sent you.
I fully intend to read it over.
So maybe that's not. Well, I'm just gonna link this video, which.
Sure. I will point out that the United States actually spends significantly more than countries with a publicly funded healthcare program on its own healthcare, which I will get you the source of.
Okay.
Is that so?
I will never understand how that is an argument against the American healthcare system.
I see the argument. The question is that per capita?
Yes.
Okay, per capita, we spend more than other countries. Now, the other question is, what is the level of quality, or how many people?
The United States has the worst healthcare system in the first world.
Oh, are you talking about the Commonwealth?
Worst how? Like, in what way?
I know what research.
Sorry, just give me a second.
Let her respond.
Let's get you this one here. Oh God, where is it?
So
sorry, I have the source on the which country spends the most per capita. I'm just trying to find it to you in a source. I suppose The National Public Radio isn't something I would normally link, but it contains the sources within. So I'll send it to the to you on Twitter, okay?
Yeah. So I was looking for a better source on the unfunded liability and all of that,
Okay,
but
sure.
I don't have one at the moment. But
It's okay.
yeah, I do know there is a lot of unfunded liability in the form of Medicare, Social Security, and all of that. I will try to provide that later in the chat, and also if when I find it, I'll put it in the description of this hangout. Oh wow, we're almost going on 3 hours here. Whew.
I only jumped in the last 30, I think.
So.
Oh man, we talked about the Jews.
For too much time. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So what?
I find the Jews to be very interesting people.
Yes.
Okay.
I am in full support of the Juden.
Oh, man.
I've got no problem with them.
You know what the most Jewish government program is?
The one where they keep all of their money and they don't give it out to anybody else?
Nope.
I don't think that government program exists.
Government.
I've sent you my two sources on both America spending the most on healthcare per capita and
where did you send those? You sent those in the group chat?
I sent them to your Twitter page.
Ah, okay.
I can find you other sources on the poor quality of American care. It's quite well documented.
So I have my doubts about the per capita spending.
Is number one.
Yeah.
I have my doubts about the
cuts by the the conservative government.
Okay.
So I doubt that. I really doubt that.
You may doubt it, but it's it's fairly well established fact.
Okay, so the per capita spending in the United States, is that just for required medical procedures, or does that include elective surgeries as well? Because we charge a whole lot for elective surgeries, but we offer elective surgeries. To the best of my knowledge...
This is the government's expenditure on healthcare per capita.
Which doesn't include anything elective.
No.
Okay. So I will look at those sources and see, because it was my understanding that the United States, even though we're spending more, we're getting more. And there is a secondary aspect of the spending more on healthcare being health insurance, and that people are indirectly paying for their health services. And as long as they're indirectly paying for it, the price goes up, and the insurance company's going to cover it, and then your insurance goes up, and then it's that deferred, or it's that out of sight, out of mind. Well, naturally, the price is going to go up if you're not the one footing the bill. So this is what we started the conversation off when talking about voting: is if you're not the one who has to experience the negative consequences of it, or if you only experience a partial of those negative consequences, you are less likely to pay attention, whereas if you were paying the full brunt of it...
So that would mean that only soldiers would be able to vote on issues of war?
Not necessarily soldiers, but anybody eligible for the draft, which is part of... If you look at the arguments that women were making against suffrage for women, is they didn't want to be eligible for the draft. And so actually when the Suffrage Act was passed, they made that exception so that way women would get the right to vote, but would not be subject to the draft. Because
I think they are now, though. At least that
seems to be something that happened very recently, like in the past year or so.
And I'm in favor of that. Equality means, the negative aspects of equality as well as the positive.
Well, I am in favor of that, and yes, if you're going to vote to send somebody to war, you have to be eligible to go to war yourself. I am not in favor of that because...
would not be able to vote.
Yeah. So I am not in favor of... It would not be able to vote on that particular aspect. I am not in favor of women being drafted because I understand that, that's not going to work out very well for our combat effectiveness. It's just not.
Thank you very much for this stream, HUMANe. I don't know.
But you have to go now that I've said something disparaging about women.
Don't worry.
It's not bad. It's that it's quite late where I am.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
I thank you for the pleasant chat, the both of you. I just wish that we would stop getting into so much fights on Twitter. It seems that both of us are a bit less polite when it comes to text than in person.
Oh yeah, I think that's generally the
always
case.
Nice.
No.
Well,
So I'm glad we were able to have a pleasant conversation, and you definitely got me to think about maybe my perspective on socialism is incorrect. So because I've always been using socialism as the government controlled socialism.
Mm-hmm.
So the means of production being seized by the state, so that way they could hand it back to the people, and then they never hand it back to the people.
I disagree very much with the Marxist-Leninist line. It has many flaws, in my opinion.
I'm still a little confused as to how you go from a capitalist system to one that is purely socialist without that in-between step, because that seems to, well, like you said right now, is we have groups that are being socialist within the capitalist system, but they're just not acting fast enough.
Well, the thing is, they do not have access to the same funds as the capitalists do. They don't have the same access to lobby the state to intervene on their behalf.
Okay, so
through measures such as bailouts, such as subsidies, all that sort of corporate welfare.
Okay, and so if we could get rid of all of that, then these socialist groups would succeed on their own.
Mm-hmm. Ideally, the transition would be peaceful, but it's a system of exploitation. And, sometimes when people are exploited, they don't take too kindly to it. But anyway, thank you very much for the chat. Hopefully we get to do it again next week.
Yeah, we'll try to elaborate on it next week. All right.
Again, on exploitation, it just seemed like an impossibility.
Yeah, I don't quite understand you're hiring somebody to do a job. They agree to do that job, but you need to give them more than that. I'm like, seemed to be a pretty good agreement between me and them that we understood this is all you have to do, and this is all I'm going to do to compensate you for that.
But the reason why I bring up time preferences, even if it's true, it doesn't change the fact I'm still gonna go into work because I do need money to survive. That I was trying to bring up with time preference.
Okay.
That I'm always gonna prefer now than later. Unlike the entrepreneur or capitalist who's gonna wait for a much longer.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, because that's another situation. So we'll have to bring this up again next week if you remind me. So you have a situation where two people start off, but let's assume two people start off on the exact same foot. They both start off with $1,000. One uses that $1,000 to, buy the things that he wants and needs right now. Food, clothing, housing, all of that sort of thing. The other guy, instead of buying, the most expensive stuff, actually goes bargain bin everything. Like the basic necessities for substance, the basic necessities for clothes. Doesn't spend the entire $1,000. That's generally so doesn't spend the entire $1,000 on those sorts of things. Manages to save some money, let's say if it's only as small as $200, sets that $200 aside and invests that in his future. They both started off with $1,000. One spent the entire $1,000. The other one still has $200 left over. From a socialist perspective, the man who saved the $200, well, now he's got $200, and the other guy has nothing. So he's supposed to share that $200 with the guy who's already spent the $1,000. That is the issue that was trying to get to with talking about that employee. That's essentially what she's advocating for, is I've got $200 set aside. I invest that in a company, right? Doesn't matter. So let's say it only takes me $150 to invest in a company, and then I'm going to pay somebody $50 to do blah, blah, blah. Well, according to Lapis, I shouldn't be able to do that. I should have to spread that entire $200 equally between us, which doesn't quite make sense, because if you look at the actual total numbers, what that would mean is that other person ended up getting $1,050 or $1,100, whereas I only got, either $950 or just $900 of my original starting $1,000. that's ultimately unfair when they're talking about, well, the laborers should have the full factory and the employers should just give it up to the laborers. And I'm like, but they've already sunk cost into it, and the laborer is benefiting from that sunk cost, which puts them ahead instead of on equal terms.
On that, just it does, like, if you include time preference, just like most people just sort of just view their selling their labor as more like a pragmatic thing to do than just, you know, like just viewing it as like an immoral or viewing it as a moral dilemma. Like that's sort of like a thing most people don't really think that they're being exploited by the capitalists unless they actually are or getting ripped off. But
Yeah.
that doesn't really happen most of the time, at least in the first world country.
Yeah, the other thing about the automation that we didn't quite get into, and so we'll have to try to get to this next week. So I don't want to, hammer these points home when she's not here to provide rebuttals to these. So I'm just trying to make mental notes of them myself right now. So the other point that I do want to bring up next time we talk about this subject is the automation. In which case, once all of these things are automated, and hopefully we'll eventually get to that point, won't socialism naturally occur? So why are we trying to force it before everything's automated? Why wouldn't we be, instead of trying to force socialism, why shouldn't we be trying to force automation? And we're like, hey, we're going to automate as much as possible, as quickly as possible under capitalism, because then it will naturally turn into socialism.
Have you ever read of Joseph Schumpeter?
Name sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
He wrote a book about capitalism, socialism, and just like he said that socialism can only be possible if mankind hunger is satiated, satisfied.
Yep. Which
but
it can't be.
He even coined the term creative destruction. Like even when we get to the point of automation, I don't think it's gonna be like a society of post scarcity. Like people are going to be constrained by time.
Yeah.
I
don't think we'll ever get to that post scarcity because there's always going to be. So I think this was something like was that the Zeitgeist movement or something like that? No, what, the Zeitgeist? Zeitgeist. Yeah, the Zeitgeist videos and all that sort of things. Like, yeah, we need to get to a society where all somebody has to do is push one button and everything is automated. And I'm like, well, that one person still has to push the freaking button. So that one person, you're exploiting that one person's labor to make him go and push the button when nobody else has to push the button. It's the same. There's still, it's this. You're never going to get to the situation where we don't have to do anything ever. There's always going to be a need for somebody to do the manual labor. You can't ever get around that. With all the automation possible, somebody's going to have to build the automation or repair the automation. Unless you've got automation that repairs automation, but then who built the automation to repair automation? You never get to a situation where humans can entirely remove themselves from the situation and have it self-sustained. That's what's required for socialism.
Also, like, human beings, like, just need something to do with their time anyway. Like,
so I'm in agreement with Lapis that if you have your food provided, if you have all your basic necessities, then yeah, you can spend your time doing recreational work. This is what a lot of people who are retired end up doing, gardening or going hiking or, get in an RV and go tour the world. But that's what socialists think that everyone can do. And I'm like, that requires a huge amount of automation, and there's still going to be a point where somebody has to do the manual work. So that's the idea of automation making socialism inevitable. I think that's, so maybe there is a good rebuttal to that, and I guess I will have to review some of the things I thought about socialism, and so maybe I was making the No True Scotsman, or maybe I was misaligning the No True Scotsman fallacy when referring to the USSR, because I always, that's socialism, but apparently there's multiple views of socialism, and what was called socialism by the people in the system, and by the people running the system, and by everybody talking about the system, was not socialism, but I don't know what it is at that point because I don't think they ever actually identified what the USSR was if it's not socialism. So I'll have to remember to ask Lapis that. It's like, well, then what was the USSR? It wasn't capitalism. It wasn't mercantilism. It wasn't feudalism. What was that particular system?
She's probably going to say it's state socialism.
State socialism. Well, isn't that still socialism?
Don't ask. It gets confusing if you break down the different types of socialism.
Different
type of capitalism.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what exactly that was, because if socialism is the means of production in the hands of the worker, then that is not socialism.
Plus, if you bring up the state capitalist,
and we need a new term to refer to state-run economies that is not fascism, that is not capitalism, it's not socialism, it's something unique. So it needs a unique name.
So it's like a Nazi economy?
Hmm?
So, third positionism?
What? Thorough positionism.
You never heard that term?
No.
Yeah, maybe I'm been around too many alt-right people.
Yeah. Probably. You should probably stop hanging out with them. I mean, you tend to emulate or take on the attributes of people you familiarize yourself with or surround yourself with. If you're surrounding yourself with alt-right people, well, then you're going to take on some of their characteristics and some of their attributes. This is why you say that there's a saying, you can judge a man by the friends that he keeps.
Hey guys, I just got I had nothing to contribute to the conversation earlier, that's why I left. So what you guys talking about now?
Oh, we're just wrapping it up in general. So those are some things that we do need to bring up next time we talk about this particular topic. With that, I think I am done with everything, and so I think I've mentioned this on the stream before, but Funfair was supposed to launch yesterday. That is not the case. It looks like the earliest we can launch is August 1st. That is our new launch date. I had some issues with the team that I had hired and ran into complications that I thought we had resolved several months ago, and they brought these things to my attention, a couple of weeks before the project was due, and I'm like, wait a minute, are you seriously? Like, I thought we had this figured out, but now you're coming back to me and now you're asking me questions that you shouldn't be asking at this point in time. It's kind of too late. So anyway, we had to move back the actual deadline that they're supposed to submit me their project by 2 months, which delays the actual launch. Because I was supposed to be in beta testing or in alpha testing all of April, or they're supposed to give it to me about mid-March, so that way I could get the full project and mix it with mine. And then I was supposed to be in alpha testing in all of April, so that way I could launch in May. Did not happen. I still do not have their finalized version of the product, and I won't have that probably until the end of May. And so then I need to actually combine that with my work, my database side, and I'll be doing that throughout the month of June, which gives me the rest of June and July to do all of my alpha testing and that sort of thing. In which case, once that's all done, August is probably the soonest I can launch, and that's what I'm hoping for, crossing my fingers that that's the last time we have to push the deadline back, because for the most part, they've got everything else done except for 2 of the systems that they thought they had a good idea, and I thought they had a good idea on until they started, they started to think about it more, and they're like, oh, this isn't gonna work. So we've had to rethink. Huh? Yeah, we're still streaming. Yeah, we're still streaming. I'm just wrapping this part up. So, these are just my shilling for my other efforts and all that sort of thing. So the Indiegogo project has been updated with that new time update, and if you guys want to help contribute to that, would be much appreciated right now. Like I said, the funding for that, or at least the Indiegogo not the Indiegogo, the GoFundMe. Yeah, the Indiegogo has unfortunately expired because it's set on a time limit. But the GoFundMe is up indefinitely. So any amount that you can contribute to that effort would be amazing. It's been going a little slower than I had hoped for. I mean, it's going about what I anticipated, but slower than I had hoped for. So there's that. I will probably be moving in the next couple of weeks here, so I may end up moving out of state. I don't know yet. I don't have any definite plans, but sometime within the month of May, I'll get all that sorted out. And that was another reason behind the delay of that particular project, is moving and trying to figure out where to go from here with my job situation outside of Fun Fair. So that has all kind of changed rather recently.
Hopefully this all sorts itself out.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that extra month or those extra months actually will make the project better in the long run, and it gives me time. And at least I've got school out of the way. I don't have that complication, and I don't have to deal with those freaking morons who have the same degree as me. Same freaking degree. And no, they couldn't even turn in... Okay, so let me take a couple minutes to rant. So, in the senior project, right? It's the last thing you're doing to prove your skills and all that before you're a professor. So, I knew from talking to these other people, and we'd also had a previous class together. We were on a group project. I'm like, okay, these guys don't quite know what they're doing. All I need from one is a single web page, no interaction, no activity. It's just a web page that displays text. That's what you learn in day one. It's basically hello world, but instead of typing out hello world, you're just typing out a paragraph. And we even had documents with the paragraph that was on there. So all they had to do was copy and paste into a web page. Didn't even do that. Didn't give me any of the they showed me a screenshot of the page that they had built with an image and with 2 lines of text that were just the same line repeated twice, and it was something stupid like welcome to the page or something generic. And I'm like, dude, this is not something we can turn in. Anyway, so they sent me that screenshot, and they sent me a HTML page that didn't have the image on it and just had just like nothing. Like, this took them all of 5 seconds to do, or would have taken me all of 5 seconds to do. I don't know how long they actually ended up spending on this, because when they talked about it in the meetings, I'm like, dude, what the hell is this? What the hell are you talking about? So I kept my mouth shut because, yeah, whatever. It's not worth dealing with it.
Yeah.
So the other person, all they had to do was a login page. Username, password, that's it. They sent me the text fields for username and password and the login button. None of it worked. They had no code behind anything, never touched the database, never referenced the database. And I'm like, this is not a login page. I have made a login page for every freaking class for the past 2 years. This is not something new. This is not something that's difficult to do. You should be able to take a login page from a different website and paste it into this project and just, like, this is not something that we should be dealing with as the senior project. This is not something that... So the dude didn't turn in whatever he was supposed to turn in. Like, all he turned in was the HTML page for it, and I'm like, why did I even ask you guys to do anything? Now I'm supposed to be turning in this project on this, the deadline. What you guys turned into me, I can't use any of this, so I basically rebuilt those entire pages myself. Yeah. And I got a B in that class, even though everything I turned in got full grades, and everything they turned in did not. So I missed a few points here and there, but at least I got more than a 90 on all of the things that were my responsibility to turn in on my own. Everything they turned in was... But those people, they've got the same bachelors that I have, from the same college, same university, yeah, same degree. Those people are competing for the same jobs I'm competing for. Don't even know how to build a web page. Don't even know how to build a login page. That's the people that I am going to job interviews against. Fuck college.
College. Oh, man, I wish I can go to this. I wish I got a different future.
Yeah.
you're able to get certain useless degrees there, or go into pointless classes like women's studies or gender studies. Fuck that.
So with that class,
understand the concept of women's rights.
Okay, we're not going to end there, but I just want to state with that class there was a section where you could review the other people that helped you on the project, and you could give them a grade. None of the grades that I gave them counted, because basically they took the top. So they took there was 5 of us on this team, and according to the professor, the top 3 scores would count. So me and the other guy, who actually knew what we were doing and kind of carried the whole team, I don't know what he graded them, but I graded the other 3 pretty poorly. But I know that my grade of them did not count. Well, the other thing is, even though I gave them like 60s and 70s and stuff, that's only 10%. That's only 10 points of their overall 1,000 point score for the class. So even if they had gotten zeros and had my credit or my grade of them counted, and they've gotten no credit for the class, it would have been like, oh, you got 990 points out of 1,000. That's how much my impression of them and my input on how poorly they did in the class counted for. So that's university right now. I did what I needed to do to get through the class, but man, if somebody hires them based on that degree, I feel sorry for that employer, because they are definitely being overcharged for anything they pay them, even if that is 1 penny. It's
bachelor's, masters. The sad thing is no one is gonna hire you without a college degree.
Yeah, so I mean, I blame colleges for their terrible curriculum and how everybody gets a degree nowadays.
Everyone's special.
But businesses, why haven't businesses clued in on this? Oh, crap, a college degree is pretty much worthless. They should be realizing this now. Because at my previous job, there was a guy with a bachelor's. I don't know how much experience he had outside of that, because we never really talked about that sort of thing. But he was at my desk at least an hour a day asking me questions about stuff. And I'm like, dude, how do you not know this? This is like, it's not complicated stuff that he was asking me. This is the simple stuff. I was like, this is the stuff that I learned in tech school. You've got your bachelor's, I don't. You're making more money than me, and you're over here asking me this simple question. So it's a little, very, very frustrating when that's the situation. You're like, yeah, I know I'm the lowest paid guy in this team. You're paid more than me because you've got your bachelor's, and yet you keep coming to me and asking me questions about how to do your job.
Yeah, I'm going to trade school. Well, I'm not going to.
You shouldn't have that much of a problem with. Are you going for a physical trade, like something like machine working or installations, or like repairs or something along those lines?
Out of this house.
If you're going towards something like a physical manual labor trade skill, so painting, carpentry, floor installation, electrical repair, that sort of thing, that's what you should be doing. If you think you've got an aptitude for something a little bit better, like something that's more white collar as opposed to blue collar, again, still stick with a technical school. Like, okay, so I'm gonna say it right here: don't go to DeVry. Don't go to DeVry. I don't know if there's another school that's better, but DeVry is the school I got my degree. Don't go there. I am right now recommending don't go to DeVry. I don't know if the other ones are better, but I don't think I'm finding it hard to imagine they can be bad as my DeVry experience.
Also, why you typing fascist over and over?
Oh, it's a joke. Just to annoy the fuck out of you.
Yeah,
to annoy the. You're like, don't call me a fascist.
Look, would you rather that he called you a scoundrel or a miser or a penny pincher? But he calls you a fascist, and that's where you draw the line.
Yeah. You say all.
Wait, no. What was the rest of that quote?
Then I call you a fascist.
Let me see.
Joke.
Okay.
Come on, I'm not fascist
The
because-
Frederick Voltaire is immune against against all dangers. One may call him a scoundrel, parasite, swindler. Ah, Dave, why did you just post something? Swindler, profiteer. It all runs off him like a water off a raincoat. But call him a fascist, and you will be astonished at how he recoils, how injured he is, because suddenly he shrinks back. I've been found out.
If you actually look into the ideology of fascism, it's such a very esoteric and very complicated ideology. There's a certain spirituality that comes with fascism that I really don't.
Well, this stream has gone on way too long, guys.
Your other stream with those two dudes about free will versus predeterminism went on for 5 damn hours.
Yeah, so this hasn't gone on quite that long, but thanks for joining us. Again, I am still doing Funfair. That is still going. That is my life's goal, but life gets in the way, man. So I'm trying desperately to get that out as soon as possible, and it just so happened a lot of things just kind of fell apart come April and May, and I'm like, oh, now my team isn't delivering what they're supposed to be delivering. I've got a situation with my house and employment, and I'm like, everything is falling apart. But at least I got my degree, and that's opening all kinds of new doors, and that'll get me out of my current funk. Yeah.
Yeah. And as always, everybody, Freddy here should be now known as Fascist Freddy.
Oh, yeah. Fascist Freddy. I like the sound of that.
There's a restaurant named Freddy's. Like, we should just name that Fascist Freddy's after him.
Yeah, Fascist Freddy's.
First, I'm not a fascist. I'm a classical liberal.
Yeah, what the fuck ever.
There's no difference. I mean, just ask Ham. There's no difference between a slave and an indentured servant, and there's no difference between whatever you say that you are and a fascist.
Every time I hear
we're messing with you, man.
Yeah, every time I hear classical liberal, though, Sargon's face just appears in my nightmares.
Yeah, nightmares or wet dreams? All right, and I think that's a good note to end it on. So, thanks for joining us. Catch you guys later.